Number 10. The Anguished Man. I don't care who you are, but every family out there has one artifact or one heirloom in their house that just doesn't sit well with you. Please comment below and let us know. I'm actually very curious to see what it is. For me, it was a dancing Halloween skull with moss and black roses coming out of its eyes, playing the classic funeral song. I don't know what you call it, but you know what I'm talking about. Speaking of funerals, that's probably where the Anguished Man came from. I'm just taking a guess. The Anguished Man is a painting of a man in anguish, or some sort of distress, and I'm not just saying this to be funny, but the painting is 100% bona fide scary. What's more unusual than that is that no one is sure of its origin or creator. The current owner of the painting says he got it from his grandmother, and the knowledge train stops there. No one knows where it came from. And seriously, look at it. It's scary, it's terrifying, I don't like it. I'm gonna walk off now, scared.
Number 9. The Goddess of Death statue. Well, that's quite the name. Okay, let's talk about it, shall we? For starters, it doesn't look like anything menacing, which makes the tale that much more convincing, if anything. It looks like one of those Crazy Bones. Remember Crazy Bones from the late 90s? So good. I had all of them. Put them in my mouth all the time, weirdly. It's like the suck on some Crazy Bones. This cursed ancient statue from 3500 BC was unearthed at Lempa, Cyprus back in 1878. The limestone was dated quite a while back, and the statue, as far as origins go, is a complete mystery. But many historians believe that it was once a fertility statue, or it represented a goddess whose name has now been lost in time. The statue has gone through numerous families, with tragedy following closely behind. Hence the, curse aspect of this list. Lord Elephant had the statue for around 6 years, and during that time, all 7 of his family members bit the bullet. Second owner, Ivor Minucci, same thing, entire family just wiped out, this time only within 4 years. Lord Thompson Noel, entire family, also 4 years, and then finally the statue had belonged to the late Sir Alan Biverbrook and his family. And you can probably guess what happened within a few years.
Number 8. Cursed Amethyst. A beautiful purple amethyst stolen from India. Worth a fortune and would make an excellent addition to any jewelry collection. Trouble is, there may be something wrong with this gorgeous gem. Cursed, that is. The first gentleman to appropriate this gem quickly became ill afterwards and passed away. The gem was then given to his son, who also became ill and croaked. The gem kept passing hands as the story goes on, until it came to the possession of a man named Edward Heron Allen, who was so convinced of the gem's dark powers, he stored it in a bank vault and put it in 7 lockboxes, just to make sure. It's kind of like the babushka doll from hell. He also left strict instructions to take out the gem 33 years exactly to the day that he put it in, and a warning for anyone who dares possess such an item. It now sits in the Museum of Natural History. I'll keep my distance, thank you very much.
Number 7. The Baker's Wedding Dress. Why is it in so many horror films the ghost is always a lady floating around in a white wedding dress? Mix it up a little, I don't know. Maybe a bridesmaid's gown wouldn't hurt. Maybe something red, something a little pizzazz on it, I don't know. Been watching a lot of RuPaul's Drag Race. Throw some glitter on something, I don't know. They're always taken out before their wedding night, it seems. Or apparently they're taken out over a vase. Back in 1849 in the small town of Altoona, Pennsylvania, Elliot Baker and his wife Hetty lived in the Baker mansion. They had 2 sons, 1 daughter, and a baker. Anna had fallen in love with one of her father's employees, another steel worker, but her father wouldn't allow the relationship to really, take off. Anna vowed to never marry again, and she locked herself in her room. When her father passed away in 1848, she went to go find her true love, but he had since settled down. So she spent the rest of her days behaving erratically, she was upset, rightfully so. Her father didn't let her have her true love, and now her soul still haunts that same wedding dress today. Not just the dress too, the mansion is haunted as well, and guests would report furniture and vases moving around all the time. That's not bad as far as hauntings go. If you ask me, moving couches? That'd be great. I have a bad back. I would love some help. Really, thank you. Anna, grab the side. Let's go. 1, 2, 3.
Number 6. The Crying Boy. Another painting! I know, but this one is extra creepy. So basically there's this very popular print of a painting. It's a boy, he's crying! Oh, I know, who would want that though, seriously. There's different versions of it, but originally done by Bruno Armilio. Well, we don't talk about Bruno because his painting had some serious creep factor going on. Besides the fact that it's a crying young man who's peering into the very depths of your soul, firefighters began to notice a pattern when putting out house fires. There's a connection here, hold on, stay tuned. No smoke alarms, leaving the stove unattended, and this painting were common. I wonder why, except the painting was never damaged in any of these fires. And after putting out a few houses, and the same painting keeps showing up and keeps surviving the said fires, that's strange. That's weird. As it turns out, the print had flame retardant chemicals in its production, thus protecting it. Maybe just don't bring it inside though.
Number 5. The Hope Diamond. Coming from the 1660s, this curse began when a gem dealer named Jean-Baptiste Tavernier bought this large diamond when visiting India. He bought it with his earned money, okay? Remember that. The origins of the diamond were unknown, but it didn't matter. This beauty was just sitting there and he had to throw all the cash at it. He had to buy it with all of his money. For sure, the money that he had. Well, later on, after Tavernier got the diamond, rumors spread throughout Europe and the United States that he actually stole the diamond from the statue of a Hindu goddess. He didn't actually buy it. Yeah, a little different than his story. Sadly, more believable too. The newspapers actually kicked this one off by publishing the Hope Diamond as an ancient curse. The diamond at one point ended up in the hands of King Louis XVI and his wife, Marie Antoinette. Well, if you don't know about them, they lost their, they died. They lost their lives during the French Revolution, let's just say that. The old guillotine dream team. The stone then went to Lord Francis Hope come 1839. By that point it was deemed cursed for real, hence the Hope Diamond name. They ended up selling the diamond shortly after being reduced to poverty, and then Evelyn Walsh McLean bought the stone in 1912. Shortly after, her son was killed in a car accident, and when the stone was delivered to its final and current home, the Smithsonian, back in 1958, the driver delivering the package was later hit by a truck. He survived, but shortly after this, his house caught fire. Moral of the story, you don't need diamonds, for more reasons than one.
Number 4, crude oil. Before anyone jumps all over me and says, but Chetty, I love crude oil because it provides jobs and economy. That's true, you're right, and there's probably going to be someone else saying that without crude oil and gasoline, how can they keep up their lifestyle? I need gas for my sedan, pickup truck, SUV, RV, dirt bike, quad bike, go-kart, speedboat, my John Deere, lawn equipment. All this is true, and as a big dude, I appreciate the automobile just as much as the next guy. I ain't walking. However, one cannot deny the amount of trouble oil has caused folks in the last 100 years. Name a place with oil and there's probably someone foaming at the mouth trying to get their hands on it. You can go either way on this one really. All I know is that I'm not the emperor of an evil empire looking for oil. Or am I?
Number 3. The Busby Stoop Chair. The Busby Stoop Chair comes from 1702, so right off the bat this legend kicked off only 10 years after the Salem witch trials. So take this one with a grain of salt, please. People made odd choices at this time. They kind of believed anything, women were witches, chairs were haunted. Welcome to 1702, I guess. Englishman Thomas Busby had some issues with his father-in-law. He didn't handle those issues well and he had to be hanged for it. Yeah, you can't just kill people for no reason, Thomas. What is it, 1701? That's crazy. He was hanged near the Humble Inn, ironic name, but a chair that was nearby during said hanging is now said to hold the spirit of one Thomas Busby. So legend has it, if you sit on this chair or if you put your knee on it or whatever, you are set to die in a frightful accident. A frightful accident! Big Chet, could you imagine? You sat in that chair, now you're gonna get your pants at work.
No!
That's it. God forbid you needed to tie your shoelace at the Humble Inn. The horrors! The horrors. So the chair was declared haunted. The chair was declared haunted. But did anything actually happen afterwards? Yeah, honestly. Sounds silly, but this was the real deal, I guess. Locals say during World War II, airmen from a nearby base came to the pub, and those who sat in the Busby chair have never returned. Again, could have had something to do with the war, but let's continue. Then in the late 70s, more accidents were connected, but they still kept the chair around until 1798. They're like, it's haunted, but it looks nice, It matches the wall. It stayed at the inn for that long, and then it was donated to the Thirsk Museum. So if you feel like checking out some haunted chairs, there you go, freaks.
Number 2. Capuchin Crypt. Hey, I get it. In the past, there were no home renovators. You couldn't walk into your favorite big box home renovation store and pick out some great additions for interior design. Well, some guys in Rome thought their church was a little underwhelming. They wanted something that made a statement, something bold, something macabre. The Church of Santa Maria in Rome, and it has a longer name but it's not dyslexia friendly so I'm not going to pronounce it, is a church that's decorated with skulls and bones arranged in tasteful art pieces, lining the walls and archways with bones that look like designs. And one room having some mummified monks and a wall full of skulls to comfort churchgoers. Oh god. I can just imagine what a room full of old bones smells like. Oh, no thank you. Oh, I'm gonna be sick. Oh.
And number 1, the Great Bed of Ware. Yeah, let's get nice and cozy for this last one. When putting this list together, Big Chet and I both agreed that haunted or not, this is a bed we would both have, for sure. It's massive, it's cozy, it caught our eye, it looks like a bed a king would sleep in, and rightfully so. The Great Bed of Ware was built for the royal family back in 1463. It was 12 feet by 12 feet, plenty of space to cut your toenails, whatever you want to do. Yeah, just brush them off. You got like 11 more feet to work with. You're good. It's a big bed. What a time. Jonas Fosbrook, a carpenter from the time, impressed King Edward IV with his work. The king gave him a pension for life all because of this bed. That's how good it was. Over time, the bed became property of the Lord of Ware Manor, a man named Thomas Fanshawe. People would travel all across the land to see this beauty. That's a fun family vacation. Hey, let's go see this bed. I heard it's a neat bed. Pack your stuff. Shakespeare mentioned it in the 12th Night. It was a big deal, but all those who stayed in the bed did not have a good night's rest. Rather, they woke up to scratches and bruises. It was horrible. That is, if they got enough sleep to begin with. People would wake up on the floor. Somehow they would roll out of a 12-foot bed. That's crazy. Today it can be found in the Victoria and Albert Museum, so if you want to go cuddle up, there you go.
At number 10, First Americans. 2021 brought us a lot of new discoveries. The study of ancient humans gained more information with the discoveries made last year. One of the bizarre finds from last year include footprints that are believed to have belonged to some of the first people to set foot in America. These footprints were discovered in muddy earth at the edge of a wetland in New Mexico and were very well preserved. After some research was done, it was found that these footprints were made somewhere between 21,000 and 23,000 years ago, which greatly pushes back the timeline of when humans came to the Americas, the last continent to be settled by humans. Up until this point, it was believed that the first humans arrived in the Americas around 13,000 years ago at the end of the last ice age. These footprints, which are believed to have been made by children, have scientists thinking that these humans migrated to the area during a time where sheets of ice blocked the passage to North America, indicating that they were there much earlier than previously thought. At number 9, Dragon Man. Now, even though the name might not suggest it, no, this is not a half-man, half-dragon, but it's still a strange discovery. This past summer, scientists discovered the skull of this new human species that they've named Homo longi, longi being the Chinese name for dragon, and dragon being a reference to the location that these remains were found, since they were discovered by the Dragon River region in northeast China. The skull of the Dragon Man dates back 146,000 years, and scientists believe that this new species belongs to another sister group of the Homo sapiens, so they're even more closely related to us than Neanderthals. What stunned researchers the most about this incredible find was the size of this being's skull, because it was pretty big for a hominid from this time. This find opened a new avenue of discoveries for scientists, so that's exciting news for anyone who takes an interest in this sort of thing. I mean, with further research, who knows what we could learn from this find. Before we carry on talking about some more of these strange discoveries, why not take a moment to leave a like on this video if you're enjoying it so far, and while you're at it, consider subscribing to the channel to see more videos like this one. At number 8, Ancient Fashion. In 2021, archaeologists made a discovery that gives us an idea of how ancient humans made clothing. It was always assumed that ancient humans used animal furs for clothing, but up until recently, not much was known about their fashion. With this newest find, scientists were able to figure out how clothing was made all those thousands of years ago. 62 bone tools were found in Morocco, and it's believed that they were used to process and smooth animal skins. This find may be the earliest evidence for clothing in the archaeological records. The bone tools that were found are believed to be between 90,000 and 120,000 years old and were used to work leather. What's fascinating about this find is the fact that similar bone tools are still used by leather workers even to this day, so it's cool to know that our ways haven't changed much over the years. At number 7, Gobekli Tepe. The Neolithic era was the final period of the Stone Age where early humans began the process of domestication of animals and agriculture. For a long time, scientists believed that this era gave way to the process of holding rituals and creating monuments to their beliefs. But with the remarkable discovery of Gobekli Tepe, that entire idea was rewritten, as this mysterious site suggested that early hunter-gatherers made this temple as a ritualistic center far before these individuals decided to create settlements and begin the agricultural revolution. Based on evidence found at this site that dates 6,000 years older than Stonehenge, groups of hunter-gatherers came to this site in Urfa, Turkey some 11,500 years ago, and carved out this ritualistic site out of the limestone that covered the area. It is believed that Gobekli Tepe was just a stopping point for these early humans. It was a place to meet, hold feasts, and then leave again. Soon enough though, the desire to regularly hold these gatherings prompted the early humans to domesticate plants and animals to have a more dependable food source, so with this in mind, it is believed that these rituals are what gave way to the agricultural revolution, not the other way around. If you've seen any content regarding Gobekli Tepe, then you would know how eerie and mysterious the site looks, and because it's so old, it holds so many secrets that we have yet to uncover. At number 6, cave paintings. I think that out of all the things left behind by our ancient ancestors, cave paintings are one of the most bizarre. So many archaic art pieces have been found by scientists over the years, from statues to ceremonial pieces, but cave paintings are by far the most fascinating, at least in my opinion. Much like modern art, it is all up to interpretation, especially since the artists who created these cave masterpieces are long gone. Some of the most mysterious cave paintings are those that depict some kind of alien life forms. Yep, I said aliens. Even back in the days of the early humans, Homo sapiens have been looking to the stars, or even having their own encounters with extraterrestrials. One such depiction of alien life comes from the Wandjina cave paintings. These eerie looking paintings depict these sky beings, as they were called. These beings are depicted with white faces devoid of a mouth, large black eyes, and a head surrounded by a halo or some kind of helmet. According to legend, the Wandjina were sky people or spirits from the sky who descended from the Milky Way and created Earth and all of its inhabitants. The Wandjina realized how big a task their creation was, and so they sent for more of their people and spent their time creating, teaching, and being gods to the people of Earth. Eventually they left, either descending into the water or returning back into the stars. This extraterrestrial discovery has to be one of the most bizarre finds from our ancient ancestors. At number 5, mass extinction. This one might be a little sad because we're going to talk about how scientists determined just how much destructions humans caused in the early days of humanity. While humans were evolving in Africa, the rest of the world's creatures were thriving for the most part. In many parts of the world untouched by human influence, there were megafauna. These megafauna were able to live and thrive for thousands of years, at least until Homo sapiens came along and ruined everything. As we started to traverse the globe, creating settlements and beginning the story of humanity, we also, in the process, killed off most of this megafauna, causing a mass extinction of these creatures. This extinction event, which scientists have called the Holocene extinction, is still ongoing. Most of the largest animals to have ever roamed the earth were wiped out around 80,000 years ago and went completely extinct by 10,000 years ago. Some scientists want to blame this on climate change, however in a lot of places, the timing of the first human settlements and the extinction of certain animals line up too precisely to completely excuse us from having caused damage to Earth's megafauna. At number 4, baby burial. Though it can be really sad, finding ancient burial sites can give researchers a lot of information about the culture of certain groups of ancient people. At a 34,000-year-old hunter-gatherer burial site near Moscow, archaeologists discovered the remains of 2 adolescent boys, and what they found alongside the remains was surprising. These 2 boys, who looked to have had some kind of disability, were buried like royalty. They were buried together along with 10,000 mammoth beads, more than 20 armbands, around 300 pierced fox teeth, 16 ivory mammoth spears, carvings, antlers, and human fibula laid across the chest of each child. Compared to the other adult burial sites, this one was quite lavish, but the reason as to why these 2 were buried with so much care is unknown. It is one of those mysteries from our history that remains unsolved, making it a bit of a bizarre find. At number 3, old settlement. In an area of Kenya called Panga ya Saidi, archaeologists discovered a network of caves that are believed to have housed hundreds of people. This cave area houses more than 1,000 square feet of space, and it is believed that an ancient tribe used to call this place home. Inside this cave, archaeologists also discovered a collection of various stone tools that date back around 67,000 years. This was the ideal living arrangement for the ancient people who used to live there because the tropical climate of the area would have been good for survival, whereas other areas of Africa would have experienced drought. This discovery just helped further our understanding of how the early humans lived. At number 2, Homofloresiensis. Here's a really interesting species of human that has recently been discovered. Homofloresiensis, nicknamed the Hobbit, were ancient hominids who lived in Indonesia around 100,000 to 50,000 years ago, and as you could probably guess by its nickname, these ancient humans were very small. It is estimated that they only stood about 3'6" on average and weighed just over 60 pounds. Homofloresiensis also had tiny brains, large teeth, shrugged forward shoulders, had no chins, and had receding foreheads. So they definitely did not look like the rest of us humans. So far, the remains of these humans have only been found on the island of Flores, Indonesia, and because of that, scientists believe that this species of human was subjected to island dwarfism, an evolutionary process that occurs from long-term isolation on an island with limited food. This island also has pygmy elephants, who are also extinct. What's pretty cool though is that scientists are currently exploring new evidence that might suggest that Homofloresiensis might have already been small before arriving to the island. And finally at number 1, ancient music. When you think about ancient humans, you might not associate them with art or music as they were quite primitive, but it turns out that some of our human ancestors were quite musically inclined. Years back, scientists discovered the first evidence of musical instruments in Germany and Slovakia. In 2008, archaeologists in Germany found flutes made from mammoth ivory that date back around 40,000 years ago, and just a few years before that, in 1995 in Slovakia, researchers found other flutes made from the thigh bones of cave bears, which dated back around 60,000 years. These Slovakian flutes were the oldest musical instruments ever found, and they were made by Neanderthals. This opened up a whole new world of discovery for scientists, as this find suggested that these ancient people were able to comprehend concepts like rhythm, tempo, and melody. This also suggested that Neanderthals were much more intelligent and sophisticated than we thought.
Kicking off the list at number 10, the Ring of Secondianus. One ring to rule them all. And by rule, I mean curse you and your entire family for ages to come. Yeah, this 12-gram gold ring, for starters, was massive. It was beautiful. Its diameter was 25 millimeters, so unless you were wearing some mighty gauntlet, she might slip off. Big ol' ring. It's like a big onion ring, but a little bit more haunting. The ring had first been found in 1785. A farmer was plowing a field in Silchester Village, which is a village west of London, known for its, grim history, as are most of these things on this list. In 45 AD, ancient Romans invaded that site, and come the 7th century, it was completely abandoned. No one was left there. The ring was mighty. It had an inscription on it as well, a Latin inscription. Of course, always Latin. It read, Senequion vivas in diem. When 1929 rolled around, new details surfaced, or resurfaced rather. The data from the ring matched an excavation that was done in the early 1900s, less than 100 miles away, a place called Lydney. That's where this ring is from. That's the OG site. At the same site, however, a tablet was found recalling the Celtic god of healing and hunting, and how his favorite gold ring was stolen. In case you're wondering why this rings a bell, Lord of the Rings was inspired by this legend. The tablet also says, may he who bears the name of Secondianus not have health until he brings the ring back to the temple of Nodens. So, if you've got it, let's go.
Number 9, the Crystal Skull. Honestly, I'm surprised we haven't talked about this more. A lot of Mesoamerican stuff today, but damn, they got a lot of curses and jinxes on all their stuff. And in reality, that's not fair. All a guy wants to do is loot and pillage other civilizations' treasures, just like my ancestors before me. Nice. Maybe. Well, besides being the second worst Indiana Jones movie, yeah, I said it, I like that one better than the Temple of Doom. Now, if you didn't sit through an hour of Shia LaBeouf, and honestly I don't blame you, basically the skulls are like a Pokemon or Dragon Balls. You gotta catch them all. Only then you will receive a wish where a ghostly outworldish creature will grant you said wish. In other words, this is what a weekend at Vanessa's Hudgens house looks like. I don't know, she said she can talk to ghosts, so. The only ghouls that she's talking to are the people who think High School Musical holds up as a theatrical release. Seriously, try watching that movie now without cringing yourself into the bottom of a liquor bottle. Speaking of ghosts and liquor, you can buy alcohol in the shape of a crystal skull, because we are modern humans and we don't take ancient warnings very seriously. We will probably feel the wrath of the crystal skull, all thanks to a Canadian Ghostbuster.
Number 8, Pompeii artifacts. Once a thriving, beautiful city in ancient Rome, Pompeii was sadly destroyed in 79 AD. This time it wasn't humans responsible for the massive loss of life. What do you know? It was actually Mother Nature this time around. She got one. Nice. The eruption of Vesuvius buried the ancient city in volcanic ash. Thank you, it took 9 tries. Little do you know, viewer. Excavation didn't begin until much later, during the 18th century, and after a century of careful excavations, the city was finally reopened again to the public. Finally, yeah. Just the place you want to go. Hey! Every year there's many reports of lootings, locals, tourists, you name it. Everyone wants to steal a little piece of Pompeii. Literally a little just in their pocket. Yeah, as if raining volcanic ash wasn't bad enough, now there's thousands of people literally stealing your land. Piece by piece. Pompeii archaeological superintendents get over 100 packages a year of said stolen fragments. They return them. Yeah, thieves will send the artifact back with a little note explaining how sorry they are and how it's caused extreme bad luck in the household. Again, might have something to do with the fact that you're a thief, but hey, who knows? Maybe it's that one time. That's why your marriage failed.
Number 7, the Pharaohs of Egypt. It was said that any thieves who dare enter or disturb the slumber of the deceased king shall be cursed. and perish. Well, this applies to archaeologists too, unfortunately. Howard Carter, the famed archaeologist, and his team back in the 1920s had come across the discovery of a lifetime, finding the tomb of King Tutankhamun. You probably heard of him. And kickstarting the study of Egyptology. For anyone in the sciences out there, you know how exciting this is. Trouble is, some folks on Howard Carter's team started to feel a little under the weather. Maybe it was all the excitement from their discovery. Maybe it was the hot African sun and the dry desert, or maybe it was the curse of the Egyptian pharaohs, as some men on his team perished from blood diseases. That's just not okay. So what's the lesson here? Maybe leave these places alone before it starts raining frogs? Huh? Think about it. I don't want that.
Number 6. The Kohinoor Diamond. Another list, another cursed diamond. Here we go, buckle up. The Kohinoor Diamond translates to Mountain of Light in Persian, which sounds beautiful, but all that glitters is not gold. A Hindu legend says those who wear the diamond will own the world, but will also know all its misfortunes. 186 carats, this thing was a pure beauty. Of course, it was passed ruler to ruler, century after century at that point. The earliest account actually is 1628. The diamond was first in the possession of Mughal ruler Shah Jahan, but once his own son had him imprisoned, the diamond later went to Iranian ruler come 1739. Nadir Shah invaded, taking countless lives as well as the Kohinoor Diamond, all their jewels for that matter, not just the one. It was horrible, but later on he was taken out by 15 of his own officers while he was asleep. Come the 18th century, Queen Victoria had possession of the diamond after being used in the Treaty of Lahore, but Queen Victoria wasn't a fan of the shape. Yeah, she's like, it doesn't really fit with my gauntlet to snap people away. So she had it recut. So now it's only 105 carats, it's a little smaller, but it's still beautiful. Since then, the diamond has only been worn by British royal women, or else we'll explode.
Number 5. Nazca Lines. Imagine the confusion the first pilots, airmen, or anyone who got a good vantage point in the Peruvian desert, and to their surprise discover some illustrations in the ground. Except, you know, they're massive and no one knows who the heck drew them. Or at least its origins. Obviously it was done by some sort of ancient tribe or civilization, sure, but the grade school process of thought isn't answered. And if you remember, then you remember. You know what I'm talking about. Your 5 W's. Your who, what, where, when, why, and sometimes how. I almost forgot how to count there. That dyslexia is a heck of a thing. I mean, I know how they dug these bad boys in the sand, but hear me out. In those times, there's no plains. The only way you'd be able to see them is on the surrounding foothills. But there's no evidence that these people live close to those drawings, so who were they made for? Gods? Extraterrestrials? The weird guy with the weird hair on the History Channel would tell you so. All I'm gonna say is, anything that's meant for gods and aliens, it ain't meant for us. So keep an eye out in space there. Keep an eye out.
Number 4. Ballista Balls. I'm not sure if you picked this up yet, but don't take things that don't belong to you. Great, hit the thumbs up for that common knowledge we should all have. Whether you believe in curses or not, leave things alone, and people for that matter, okay? If you want to learn more about Roman artillery, that's why we're here. Don't steal 6th century weaponry. Ever, it's a bad idea. Back in 1989, an archaeological team was brushing up the pass near Israeli-Syrian borders, and the remains of an ancient Roman ballista, a massive crossbow, were found. It's exciting, but here comes the bad stuff. 6 years later, researchers found ballista balls, which were sadly the ammo when it came to these massive war machines. And in 2015, these balls appeared in a courtyard outside of a museum in Israel, written from an anonymous thief, imploring others to never touch those stone balls or take them. As, you know, they're cursed. They're all cursed, apparently, full of bad luck. His family apparently left him, this thief, and he had to sell everything he possessed in order to just get by, including those ballista balls. He was gonna sell them and he's like, you know what, no, that's the last thing I own, I'm putting it back. Could be a curse, again, or the fact that he was the thief. Either or. Both not great.
Number 3, Montezumas Revenge. Yes, that's right, Montezumas Revenge, a traveler's worst nightmare. I too have succumbed to the horrors of Montezuma's Revenge. And it's always when I gotta do something important, like on a movie set, or with a group of people I'm really trying to impress, especially career-wise. So the rule is no pickled bocconcini peppers before a critical event. However, I'm talking about a different kind of Montezuma's Revenge, not the bathroom kind. I'm talking about his gold. I'm talking about when Hernan Cortez and the conquistadors destroyed the Aztec Empire. Montezuma cursed them. And that applies to his lost gold as well, which in case you didn't know, the Spanish were after. It's pretty much all they were after. So if Montezuma can curse your family trip to Cancun, then surely he can curse a pile of his own gold and jewels. After some were dumped in the lake and others in the desert, I just wouldn't exactly be so excited to go find it. You don't know what might happen if you do. If he can give you diarrhea, maybe he'd give you vomiting. You don't know. You don't know. I'm pointing a lot in this video.
And number 2, ancient mirror. It doesn't matter who you are, you've heard of this curse before. Maybe you haven't. Maybe you're experiencing this curse right now. I hope not. You break a mirror and what do you get? You get 7 years of bad luck. Has this happened to you ever? If so, what year are you on? I'm on 4 myself. How close are you to the 7-year mark? Because we got your back, okay? Ancient Romans believed that the human soul would renew every 7 years. That's where the 7-year thing comes into play. It's where it all started. It takes time to repair the human soul, right? Combined with the belief that mirror's reflection was the only way into the soul, well, now we have one dude in history who feels really bad for breaking the first ever mirror. Therefore, a curse has lived on. If you break a mirror, you're tearing the soul from the body, and now you're abandoning it. In Kazakhstan, if you break a mirror, evil spirits will haunt the person responsible for the damage. That's a pretty horrible deal. They say you can't look into a broken mirror afterwards, like once it shatters into a bunch of pieces, because that's bad luck as well. So if you break a mirror, you just gotta do nothing about it, I guess. You just gotta be like, okay, and sweep without looking. There's too many mirrors now. I can cut to today. I'm sure ancient Romans had no idea what 2022 would look like. We have phone cases with mirrors on them. We're literally surrounded by mirrors. I broke a studio mirror, a dance studio mirror once. Am I doomed? I feel like I'm doomed.
Number 1, vampire burial. If you couldn't tell, I get a lot of my knowledge from movies, TV, and video games. It's just what raised me, that's how it goes. So you can't blame me when my knowledge of vampires comes from Skyrim and the hit young adult romance novels Twilight. You know what I'm saying? However, what I do know is that they have sharp teeth, they don't like garlic, and will cease to exist if you drive a wooden stake through their heart. However, that's kind of a moot point, as most things would not work anymore if you did that. I know I wouldn't. Some folks in Poland a few hundred years ago were not taking any chances, however. Remains found in Kaldus, Poland were that of anti-vampire graves. Basically, you bury the vampires and you leave a wooden stake in their heart just in case it wants to wake up and eat you, or do whatever they do at night. I don't know, blah blah blah, some of that stuff. Or remove their head entirely. No wooden stake? No problem. Just toss a couple small boulders into the hole. That way, the bloodthirsty menace can't get people. You know, boy, people in the past were so kind. That's so nice. Number 10, the plague. Life was okay back in the Middle Ages. The sun was shining, there was a castle that overlooked the serfs as they worked day and night to provide for the community. Children frolicked in the meadows, and the smell of fresh baked bread fills the air as both the flour mill and the ladies kneading dough are hard at work. Sounds too good to be true. New faces from other lands have brought trinkets and trade, and that's awesome, but they have also brought something else. Something that's not visible to the naked eye. Shortly after, people in the village become violently ill. The smell of bread has been replaced by burning bodies. This, ladies and gentlemen, was the discovery of the plague. The bubonic plague took the world by storm. Millions perished in a horrible and disgusting sickness. It almost got all of us too. Seriously, the percentage is actually kind of crazy. And because of roaming traders like from the Silk Road, meeting east and west, a lack of medical knowledge and hygiene, well, it spread like wildfire. Number 9, poisonous berries. This might sound ridiculous, but at some point, someone had to test out this stuff or, well, find out by accident. Early humans relied on hunting, scavenging, and harvesting before we had mastered agriculture. Hunting is difficult, especially if you're burning more calories than it's worth. Man, hunting those big animals, I don't know. Foraging is a great alternative, but once the supply runs out, well, it's time to move, and that's pretty much what we did. However, the biggest issue is knowing what's good to eat, not what's the tastiest. But what's safe to eat? I mean, take blueberries and nightshade for example. Blueberries are a delicious summer treat that also make for a great pie. And, well, you can probably find lots of them. Nightshade looks identical to blueberries, except they contain dangerous amounts of alkaloids and other compounds that even if a small handful are eaten, it could prove to be fatal. And they look exactly alike and can be found in droves. So be careful, folks. If it grows on a wood, it's good. If it grows in a tree, this pea, don't eat it. That's a rhyme that I made just now on the top of my head. There you go. That's, I don't know. Number 8, Sleeping Giant. December 7th, 1941, the Empire of Japan attacked the naval Pearl Harbor base and America in hopes of persuading America to let go of their oil embargo and not join the war effort. Well, the opposite happened. Not only did America join the effort, but went into overdrive. Japan, as they called it, had woken the sleeping giant. America put its factories into overdrive and turbo mode, and with allies right behind them punched their way through Europe. However, the Pacific was their time for revenge, and on those faithful days in August of 1945, Japan realized probably the most darkest discovery ever. America would wipe out 2 of their cities with something that they could quite possibly end the entire world with. It doesn't get much darker than that. Ending the whole world, and that's end worlders. World enders, that's it. World enders. There we go. I can talk today, I'll be alright. Number 7, the Titanic. The Titanic is just one of those things that people love. Like Canadian sweetheart Ryan Reynolds, or the Rocky Horror Picture Show. For some reason, people just like those things. I get Ryan Reynolds, I'm not a big fan of the movie though. Rocky Horror Picture Show, I'm not a big fan. Even before the movie, there was some fascination with this cruise liner, otherwise it might not have been found. However, take off your nostalgia glasses for a second, if you will. When the Titanic was found on the ocean floor September 1st, 1985, she was as she sank, meaning all the unfortunate souls aboard that went down with the ship were likely still there, or, well, what was left of them. Clothes, shoes, and trinkets of all those who perished at sea. It does make for a great story, yes, it absolutely does, but this, folks, is a horrific tragedy, and I can only imagine the eeriness of being down there without any lights on. The horror, oh. God. And it's freezing cold water too, you had no chance, dude. Awful. Number 6, Sokka. Mother Russia! She is massive and vast, isn't she? Just like first wife. Anyway. Today, however, I'd like to focus on the Sakha region of Russia, which is a large area in the east. What makes this area so unique? Well, it's because it's barely been explored. We're talking thousands of kilometers here, not just a few. While there are humans who live there, it's kind of like Canada, actually. Oh, we only live in small pockets close to other civilizations. We're on the border pretty much. That's because this part of Russia is covered in permafrost. Even the major city in the area is built upon this. The rest is, well, snowy, forest, wildlife, and well, get your highlighters out because it's cold, very cold, with temperatures reaching below 50 degrees Celsius. Minus 50? What? That's insane. Can you just imagine what's hiding out there? We just don't know. That's insanity. Minus 50. Oh, dude, come on. That's too cold even for me, I'm Canadian. Number 5, chlorine gas. World War I was a very strange time to be alive. Tanks, airplanes, cars, the industrial age was over and the modern age had come. Sort of. Still no sliced bread yet though. It was a mix of old and new technology. Isn't that weird to think about? They had no sliced bread, they got airplanes? That's just weird. What am I getting at with this? Well, that would be chlorine gas. Trust me, it all makes sense, folks. A tactic that was many years ahead of its time, so you can imagine the horrible awfulness of encountering that for the first time. A thick greenish or yellowish smoke would slowly crawl across the battlefield and into soldiers' lungs where it suffocated and burned flesh. It was awful, and the first time it happened, there was nothing to protect against it. To those experiencing this for the first time, it would have been a very dark discovery and one of humanity's lowest points. It really was. Not a good time. Number 4, tribals. Skyscrapers, trucks, excavators, the internet, hospitals, overpriced coffee, and waiting in line at the airport. All these things make for our modern society, but what if I told you that in deep and secluded areas of this earth, this planet that you live on, the same one, there are humans just like you or I who live like it's year 1. Yes, that's right. To this day, in 2022, there still exist tribal peoples that have not been contacted and or live, well, pretty much in the Stone Age. Surprisingly, you can find them all over the earth. South America happens to be a very popular spot. While in the past some contact has been made, it is best to leave well enough alone, especially considering that some can be quite violent. Take the Sentinelese for example, a tribal group that lives not too far from the coast of India. When an attempt to contact this tribe, it often ends with spears and arrows. And many who have come to contact them, well, they didn't make it, they perished. Number 3, Diglock. After World War II had ended, the metaphorical curtains were being drawn back and the Allies got a front row seat into what Germany had been up to. It wasn't a pretty sight, it was actually pretty heinous. But we all know about the camps and what they did. It was bad, it was really bad, and I'm not really allowed to talk about it. But however, what you may not know is about their super secret Wunderwaffe programs, which include the Diglock. Now this seems science fiction, but yeah, there were all kinds of weird and freaky experiments going on. A lot I can't talk about. One such experiment was the Diglock. It was being described as a bell-shaped device that was claimed to create an anti-gravity field. That's just crazy. Okay. If this sounds bonkers, that's because it is, and a lot of this weird German science became the basis and foundation for the hidden story in the hit classic video game Call of Duty Zombies. Isn't that so weird? That shouldn't be real. That's weird. Like Dr. Richtofon's real, you know what I mean? Number 2, the Mariana Trench. Doesn't get much darker than the Mariana Trench. Literally, I mean, maybe besides Adam's underwear. They were white when he bought them, I don't know. The famous Mariana Trench is the deepest point in the ocean, resting at a steep 10,000 meters, or 36,000 feet in American. Expeditions have been made to see what we could find, and to many surprise, there's actually life that far down, who would have thought? The strangest of all sea creatures, to be sure. The question is, however, it's not what we've seen, but we have not. There's still lots to be found down there, but hard to get down there, a lot of pressure. Number 1. Space. This one is kind of general, but bear with me. For the longest time, we thought Earth was the center of the universe, and who can blame us? Sometimes we're awesome. Talking to you, MTV generation, we're the best, right? Yeah. But through many great efforts over the last 100 years, it's clear that Earth is but a cog in the cosmic machine. While we don't know much about what's out there, we do know enough. We know that we are a planet, a part of a solar system, like the millions of others that make up this galaxy and the millions of galaxies that are out there. We are so tiny in a massive universe, and while the debate for other life forms is valid, it's quite possible we could be all alone. It could be just us in an infinite universe. That's scary. That's a dark discovery. Can you imagine how many millions and billions of kilometers away things are, and we're the only people? Yo, that's crazy. Oh.
Number 10. Gold Tongues. 140 miles south of Cairo is El Banasa. Archaeologists just found 2 sealed tombs containing the remains of a mystery man and a mystery woman, and an array of clues and, of course, treasures. The sealed tomb and sarcophagi, made of limestone, included scarab amulets, 4 canopic mummy jars, and more than 400 pieces of pottery and funerary figurines. Yeah, like little guys. The mummy's face was also so well preserved with a perfectly shiny golden tongue still inside his mouth. Ooh, ouch. They just dip that in, or they cut that off and kind of replace it. How's that work? Guy's gonna have a hard time with his L's. The team stumbled upon 3 golden tongues actually, and archaeologists working in the Alexandria also discovered gold tongue mummies dating to about 2,000 years ago. Talk about an expensive sentence, huh? Number 9. Ginger. As always, if you like what we do here on Bumblebee, throw us a like button, why don't you? Or comment down below. Which one of these creep you out the most? The golden tongues? Dude, it's already got me. The Gobekli pre-dynastic mummies are 6 naturally mummified bodies dating to approximately 3400 BCE, or from the late pre-dynastic period of ancient Egypt. Since 1901, the first body excavated has remained on display in the British Museum. The body, of course, was originally nicknamed Ginger due to its very well-preserved, healthy, shiny red hair. This nickname is no longer officially used, of course, because these are people we're talking about here. After the Human Tissue Act of 2004, the British Museum developed policies for proper treatment of human remains, and no longer used nicknames. Yeah, that would have been nice, wouldn't it? Just finding bones making jokes. Ah yes, look, Limbs McGee. I'll write that down. I'll write that down in here as the official. These 6 were excavated at the end of the 19th century by Wallace Budge and are the first complete, fully intact pre-dynastic bodies ever discovered to this day. Spooky. Number 8. King Tut. We can't just blow by this list without the scariest event of all. The tomb of Tutankhamun was discovered in 1922 in the Valley of the Kings, led by Egyptologist Howard Carter. Tut's tomb was hidden by debris, luckily, therefore it never got looted throughout the centuries. More than 5,000 objects were found, including the infamous King Tut himself. Egypt, now part of the British rule, gave a feeling of national pride back then, strengthening pharaohism and gluing Egypt's ties to this now ancient world. The publicity surrounding the excavation intensified when one of the founders actually died of an infection, giving rise to the infamous cursed tomb. But then a couple of other discoverers just started dropping dead and everyone was like, oh yeah, so that's what cursed means, huh? It says do not open right here, I see that now, gotcha. Number 7, John Wilkes Booth. Okay, so mummies are usually tied with Egyptian ritual and historical burial purposes, but it wasn't just them though. It's pretty common to preserve a body. John Wilkes Booth was famous for a couple of things. First off, he was one of the world's greatest actors, a true thespian, and of course, a prolific American presidential assassin. Yeah, he shot Lincoln. So apparently he escaped the manhunt, which then apparently toured the US as a mummified version of himself. Wait, what? In 1903, a drifter named David E. George locked himself in a hotel, taking his own life by ingesting a lethal amount of arsenic. According to the news report, George made a confession. I am not David E. George, I am the one who killed the best man that ever lived. I am John Wilkes Booth. The embalmed body was soon fought over, and beginning in 1937 and continuing all the way into the 1950s, the mummy was part of Jay Gould's $1 million circus. Yeah, traveling with elephants, acrobats, and high dive dog acts all around the world. According to a PBS report, the mummy itself was actually last seen in the 1970s and maybe in the hands of a private collector. Dude, people are sick. They'll buy and sell literally anything for money and clout. Like, I don't get it, dude. Just like buy and sell Pokemon cards or something, you know? Number 6, Nicostratus. A large unknown Greco-Roman tomb was just found this year and excavated in Aswan in South Egypt. An Egyptian-Italian mission led by Patrizia Piacentini, professor of Egyptology and archaeology at the University of Milan. What makes this discovery so cool is the mummies that were discovered. This massive Romanized tomb located in the Aga Khan Mausoleum found archaeological treasures including offering tables, stone panels littered in hieroglyphics, and one large beautiful copper necklace engraved in Greek scripture with the name Nicostratus on it. The room is overlooked by 4 burial chambers dug deep into the rock where a beautiful terracotta sarcophagus lay. The architecture alone is puzzling, let alone these mysterious high-order young adults that were mummified here. Early studies have indicated so far that the grave includes bodies from more than one family, so the mystery question: who was this Nicostratus? Who was he? And who are these unrelated followers that followed him? Number 5, tattoos. Okay, so who was the first? We see them everywhere. I don't have any myself, but every which way you look, somebody's tatted head to toe. So who was the first one? Well, a mummy known as the Gobekli Man A pushes evidence back about 1,000 years. The oldest tattoos were once thought to belong to a South American Chinchoro mummy who had a mustache tattooed onto his face. It was initially thought that he was the oldest specimen of ink. Then, an ancient princess was found in Siberia. She holds one of the most well-preserved tattoos ever found on a body. Princess Ukok, a Scythian ruler who sadly died of breast cancer around 3,000 years ago. Her body was inked up so heavily and she was buried next to 6 horses, indicating that she was of high royalty. But in 1991, the oldest mummy ever found still holds the Guinness World Record for the oldest tats. Like, 5,000 years old. Otzi the Iceman reps 61 tattoos over his entire body, mostly lines that researchers think was either medicinal or therapeutic. Several needles were tied together and the skin was pricked stick and poke style with ink made from wood smoke and milk. Mix them together, rub them all over the wounds, and voila, Travis Barker. Number 4, the Lady of Cow. Speaking of being tatted head to toe for reasons we're still unsure of, the Lady of Cow. She was discovered in 2006 by a team of Peruvian archaeologists in the El Brujo archaeological complex in northern Peru led by Regulo Franco Jordan, one of the National Cultural Institute of Peru. The mummy, which is heavily tattooed head to toe and wrapped in many layers of cloth, was found with a ton of ceremonial items, pottery, weapons, and jewelry. The remains of a second young woman were found as well, and researchers think it could have been a sacrifice, signifying this woman was a ruler of many. Modern autopsy reveals that they were in their mid-20s and died of complications due to pregnancy. They think she died somewhere around 450 BCE, and until they found her, researchers were almost certain that only men held high standing in their culture and power, and that women of this status should never have existed. Well, rewrite them, boys, because Beyonce said it. Who run the world? Girls. Boom. Right there. Evidence, sacrifice, tattoos. Come on. Number 3. Killer crocs. In 1899, archaeologists funded by the University of California benefactor Phoebe A. Hearst found hundreds of crocodile mummies on an expedition to northern Egypt. 19 mummified crocodiles are part of the Egyptian collection at the Phoebe A. Hearst Museum of Anthropology at UC Berkeley. These things were a constant threat to ancient Egyptians, and there were a lot of them. Some tomb walls are even decorated head to toe with scenes that show herdsmen performing magical spells to ward off crocodiles before they cross the Nile on wooden boats. It was such a big problem every August when the Nile would flood that there were croc priests who would spend all day mummifying and offering them to the gods. Apparently the Dutch National Museum of Antiques unwrapped and scanned a 3,000-year-old croc mummy, which were actually 50 little crocodiles positioned in a way to make it look like a giant croc. Like a croc within a croc. And not just them too. The cat-faced goddess Bastet would receive mummified cats while baboons were offered to Thoth, the god of wisdom. Animal mummification was so popular that it became a thriving industry. In one catacomb complex, Egyptologists think there could be as many as 70 million mummified animals crammed into like 30 small rooms. Different times, man, different times. Number 2. Chinchoro Mummies. On the sandy dunes of the Atacama Desert, the Chilean port city of Arica, bordering Peru, was home to the Chinchoro people. In July, the United Nations Cultural Organization, UNESCO, added hundreds of well-preserved mummies to its World Heritage List. The Chinchoro Mummies. First documented in 1917 by German archaeologist Max Uhl, who had found some of the preserved bodies actually on a beach. Radiocarbon dating eventually showed that the mummies were more than 7,000 years old, more than 2 millennia older than the more widely known Egyptian mummies. The earliest one, the Agony Man, dates to 7020 BCE. They discovered their process of 3 stages. The black technique was to take the deceased person's body apart, limb by limb, treating it and then reassembling it all in like a Mr. Potato Head style. Then, the red technique, which made incisions above the shoulders to remove all internal organs and dry the body out. And finally, the mud coat. Basically caking the body in a mixture of clay and gypsum in a last coat seal. Then they'd wrap you up. And using sticks to mold and hold a cast of a person's shape, this process was, well, this. Researchers think that Egyptians were like, oh, that's how you do it. I see what the, okay, perfect. Just gonna go over there and do that. And number 1, Sakara Mummies. In 2019, just 20 miles south of Cairo on the Nile's west bank, there lays a field mixed of sand and earth that make up the ancient site of Sakara. It's the oldest building known to humans. Like old. Older than the 3 pyramids. And with that comes a new archaeological discovery. This year, archaeologists just discovered the largest loot of ancient Egypt ever. Better than Tut's tomb. 150 bronze statues, 250 coffins with mummies in them that date back 3,000 years. Sakara is Egypt's richest archaeological site. Home to the 4,700-year-old Step Pyramid, Egypt's oldest, the site was used as a burial ground. Geophysical surveys have revealed the remains of numerous temples buried under the sand, in which we have discovered only a quarter of the actual site. Millions of animal mummies like dogs, cats, cobras, and crocs, even 2 lion cubs were found mummified. The work site is 500 yards long, and the archaeologists working there have only carried out the first 100 yards of digging. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I can't wait to see like what next year holds. Like, get some more bulldozers going, you know? Sakara, Gobekli Tepe, Peru? More scans, more scans! So interesting, but also very terrifying. Number 10. Kui. A very preserved body of a high-ranking nobleman called Kui was discovered in 2019 in quite a lavish tomb in the necropolis of Sakara. This is a lot older than we originally thought, too. To date, it's now one of the oldest Egyptian mummies ever discovered. Dated to the Old Kingdom, aka the trial and error period of the mummification process. But after finding Kui, we gotta rewrite some stuff. Techniques some 4,000 years ago, 1,000 years before they thought this process was even mastered. I'm talking fine linens, quality resin, and of course, a full mummification process. This wasn't thought to have been used for at least like another 999 years. Salima Ikram, head of Egyptology at the American University in Cairo, said, quote, "Books about mummification and the history of the Old Kingdom will all need to be revised." Sounds like the first 4 minutes to a banger Nicolas Cage movie to me, doesn't it? Number 9. Ramses II. As always, if you did what we do here, make sure to Hulk smash that like button or leave us a comment down below. Ramses II, aka Ramses the Great, the 3rd pharaoh of the 19th dynasty and considered one of the greatest ever. And talk about fragile shipping, his mummy was moved a ton of times. Due to looting, of course, not recently either. It's written all over his linens, actually. Moved here, then moved here. Finally, well, had to move them again here. Originally buried in the Valley of the Kings, but was then moved by priests to the tomb of Queen Inipi. Then moved again 3 days later to another tomb. People wanted him, or wanted what was on him. In 2019, Egyptologists unearthed a ka related to Ramses II. A ka is basically a carved statue that would allow the soul to have a place or vehicle on Earth to just sit and chill in. It's only the second ka ever found. This discovery is considered one of the rarest archaeological discoveries ever from Egyptologists. Yeah, write that down. Important stuff. Number 8. Eggfed Girl. In 1921, just outside Eggfed, Denmark, a Nordic bronze naturally preserved woman was discovered inside a handcrafted oak tree trunk coffin. Her burial has been dated by dendrochronology to 1370 BCE. She was wearing 2 bronze bracelets, a wool skirt, shirt, and belt, and a large disc plate decorated with spirals and a spike. At her feet, the cremated remains of a young one, unfortunately. By her head, a small birch bark box that contained an awl to puncture holes, various pins, and a boned carved hair comb. And of course, a big bucket of beer. Skull! But who exactly was the Eggfed woman? It remains a mystery. Number 7. Lady Rye. Discovered and unwrapped by Grafton Elliott Smith in 1909, the distinguished mummy perfectly wrapped was apparently an ancient Egyptian woman of the 18th dynasty who served as nursemaid to Queen Ahmose Nefertari, the most perfect example of embalming that has come down to us from the time of the early 18th dynasty, or perhaps even any period. Now sitting in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, this mid-30s woman is still a pretty big mystery. Her mummified remains were discovered in a Theban tomb, and scientists revealed in 2009 using a CAT scan, Lady Rye had a diseased aortic arch and is thus the oldest known mummy with evidence of atherosclerosis. They think that she died around 1530 BCE. The mummy of Ahmose Inipi, a princess of queen of the late 17th dynasty and also aunt to Ahmose Nefertari, was found in the outer coffin of Lady Rye, so scientists are sure that she was highly respected, but we got DNA analytics from thousands of years ago, so who knows. Number 6. The Natashwanat Mummy. During an excavation in 1950 under a rock shelf in Libya, under the scorching sun of the Sahara Desert, scientists think they might have found the world's oldest mummy. Just east of Egypt is a site called Ouahamagyag. A small mummified body was found under 5,000-year-old sands, wrapped beneath 5,000-year-old leaves inside an insulated antelope skin sack, perfectly mummified. The ancient site was first excavated in the late 1940s, and the small, perfectly preserved Natashwanat mummy is unearthed by the help of University of Rome professor Fabrizio Mori, and it was found 1,500 miles west of the Nile. Using radiocarbon dating, the mummy was thought to be between 5,400 and 5,600 years old, which makes it much older than any of the mummies found over in ancient Egypt. It was believed that the makers of the mummy were cattle herders and occupied North Africa at the time when the Sahara was a savanna. The mummy now resides in Tripoli, Libya. So cattle farmers knew how to embalm and perfectly preserve for 5,000 years. That's what you're telling me here. Number 5. Princess of Zauhe. The River Princess, aka the Beauty of Zauhe, was found in 2003 by archaeologists with the Zauhe University studying Ordex Necropolis, a small river cemetery number 5, Xinjiang, Western China. She's also known as M11, not because she was a spy with James Bond, but for the tomb that she was found in. She was buried and preserved almost 4,000 years ago. Very well preserved, with clothes, hair, and even eyelashes still intact. She's only named princess due to her amazingly preserved body, not because she was an actual ruler or anything. Archaeologists think that because of the dry, salty conditions of the desert and her tightly sealed boat coffin made of cowhide, it had something to do with the almost flawless process. Cowhide dries out, it shrinks, sealing the coffin airtight. She wasn't embalmed before her death, remember, but mummified naturally due to the climate and method. A happy accident, I guess. A 2014 study revealed that it was now part of the oldest preserved cheese we'd ever find. Yep, a little last-minute snack or a little offering to the gods. Both good. Number 4. Shinzue. The Marquis of Die, aka Lady Di, not that Lady Di, but this Lady Di, was a Chinese noblewoman and wife to Li Kang, a chancellor of the Western Han dynasty. Her mummified body was found buried deep within a hillside in south-central China in 1972 by workers digging on an air raid shelter. The room is absolutely filled to the brim with objects that defined her life. Exquisite jewelry, dresses, slippers, beauty products, and even containers of her favorite food. Little Tupperware snack there. A lavish life. Kardashian-like wealth. Her body was found within 4 rectangle tombs that sat inside each other, then buried deep under layers of charcoal and white clay. A coffin within a coffin. Then wrapped up in more than 20 layers of cloth and bound with silk ribbon and placed inside an airtight coffin. The chamber was then buried deep underground to ensure cool, dry places for the body to rest. She's so well preserved, scientists in 2003 developed a secret compound that was actually injected into her still existing veins to assure further preservation. Yeah, that's not scary at all. Just inject a 3,000-year-old mummy with a secret vial. Yeah. I've seen Captain America, I know where this is going. Number 3. Taland Maam. The Taland Man is a naturally mummified corpse which at first people thought was just a deceased old man, slowly decaying days after his demise. A man from the Scandinavia pre-Roman Iron Age actually. 5th century BCE we're talking. Long time ago. He was found in 1950 by Viggo and Emil Hojard while working on the land, preserved as a quote, bog body near the Jutland Peninsula in Denmark. The cause of death has been determined as hanging. Scholars believe that the man was actually a human sacrifice rather than an executed criminal because of the arranged position of his body and eyes and mouth, them being closed and all. His body was arranged in a fetal position, wearing a pointed sheepskin hat and a hide belt around his waist. Additionally, the noose made of animal hide was found beside his naked body. Radiocarbon dating indicate that he died circa 500 BCE. In 1987, the Silkeborg Museum reconstructed the body using the skeletal remains where it's on display today. Yeah, it's old, like wrinkles and all. Number 2. The Lovers of Modena. The Lovers of Modena are a pair of human skeletons well preserved underground and discovered in 2009 by archaeologists in Modena, Italy. The 2 skeletons were buried with their hands interlocked and are believed to have been buried between the 4th and 6th century BCE. Originally it was assumed that the 2 were composed of a male and a female, due to the other specimens and examples that they had found in the region. The discovery of the 2 buried hand in hand or embracing mummies aren't uncommon though. The Lovers of Valdero, buried over 6,000 years ago, were buried just north in Italy, but male and female. So when archaeologists discovered the fossilized pair in the mud of Modena, they assumed lovers since they were both positioned with their heads staring at each other. Pretty common. After DNA analysis of enamel peptides on their teeth by the University of Bologna, it was confirmed that the remains belonged to 2 males. Regardless of the nature of the relationship, the Modena skeletons offer a unique representation of the love, bond, brotherhood, or commitment between these 2 men during the late Italian antiquity period. This is like the original Romeo and Juliet. In love for more than 5,000 years, the pair are now on display at the Civic Museum of Modena. That just made my day. And number 1, Spirit Cave. The Spirit Cave mummy is the oldest human mummy found in North America. Officially. I had to obviously save it for my number 1 spot, and it was discovered in 1940 in Spirit Cave 13 miles east of Nevada, United States. It was found by husband and wife archaeological team Sidney and Georgia Wheeler. Aged around 40 years old when he died, the Spirit Cave mummy was one of the first to be dated using accelerated mass spectrometer radiocarbon dating. The Wheelers were surveying archaeological sites, and upon finding the cave they discovered the remains wrapped in tulle matting. Wearing moccasins and wrapped in rabbit skin blankets, the Wheelers also discovered 67 artifacts from the cave such as bowls, cloths, carvings, and art. These artifacts were then examined at the Nevada State Museum where they were initially estimated between 1,500 and 2,000 years old. After the University of California examined 17 Spirit Cave artifacts, the results say that the mummy is approximately 9,500 to 10,000 years old. Yeah, just a bit of a difference there, huh? Just a small difference in age.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Pompeii Chariot. Nothing like finding a sweet ride from ancient times. Once a thriving, beautiful city in ancient Rome, Pompeii was sadly destroyed in 79 AD. The eruption of Mount Vesuvius buried the ancient city in volcanic ash. Excavations, of course, didn't begin until much later, during the 18th century, and after an entire century of careful searching, the city was reopened to the public once again. All was lost during that fateful eruption, but we're slowly recovering more and more. For example, a 2,000-year-old chariot is pretty sweet. The decorations on the side are quite beautiful. They look like flower decorations, and according to Eric Poehler, who is a professor at the University of Massachusetts, this chariot was for the highest class. He calls it the Lamborghini of chariots. I still can't drive. Nice. Number 9. Pompeii Restaurant. Table for 8? Perfect. Another addition to the list has to be another find from Pompeii. This is the first time in history where hot food and drink eatery has been unearthed. Yeah, in case you're wondering right now, fast food was also tempting the finest back in the 1st century. Yeah, we found a restaurant in 2019, but we were too busy talking about the Avengers to care about it. The meal of the day was most likely honey roasted rodents. Yeah, that's our best guess. Archaeologists have gathered clues to find out what 12,000 people were rushing to eat every single day. Honey roasted rodents. Nice. Rolls off thy tongue, some would say. In typical human fashion, the restaurant is now open again. It's the same place. Yep, don't forget to tip. It's bad juju. Please don't tip. You have to tip. You have to. Number 8, Turkey Gladiator Arena. Yes, another arena, another staple in history filled with gruesome combat in the name of entertainment. An 1800-year-old arena was discovered back in 2020. We were all still, inside watching Ozark. Meanwhile, a 90-meter wide amphitheater was found in the ancient city of Mastura. Its purpose was thought to be the same as the Colosseum. Just, a lot of bad stuff. It was to host these massive professional gladiator fights with a lot of wild animals. They were involved doing bad stuff. This was around 200 AD when the Severian dynasty was ruling the Roman Empire. If betting on animal fights was your thing, you'd have to travel to this place. This is where you'd want to go. Yeah, hope you have trail shoes on and great knees. Ugh, I'm getting weak just looking at those hills. My patellas are like, no, I don't want to go. Can we go to Rome, please? Number 7, the Great Treasurer. Ta-Mwish had a pretty sweet job back in 1200 BC. He was the head of treasury under Ramses II, aka Ramses the Great, the 3rd pharaoh of Egypt's 19th dynasty. He once ruled from 1279 to 1213 BC, and about a year ago we found his royal scribe's tomb. And it's pretty fancy. It's very fancy. The site also includes tombs of other statesmen from the 19th dynasty, of course buried in Saqqara, Giza. In typical tomb fashion, Cairo archaeologists found writings and drawings that tell us more about Egypt's time under the ruling of Ramses the Great. And it looks nothing like any of the graffiti we have today. Where art is gone. Like natural history of art and stuff, it's just we've lost that. Now we have Twitter. That's how we're gonna be remembered by. Twitter and sporks. That's all we'll find in thousands of years. Number 6, the lost city of Heraklion. Before it was discovered in 2001, the ancient city of Heraklion was barely mentioned in texts throughout history. Yet archaeologist Frank Gaudio still found it. What an OG. It was hiding in the depths, around 7 kilometers off the coast, and it was pretty obvious that it was an ancient city because, well, there were 64 shipwrecks, and 700 anchors, and 16-foot statues just hanging about. One vessel was around 80 feet long. It was a classical Greek flat-bottomed ship, with oars on both sides and a massive sail. It was a bit hard to find this wreck seeing as it was hidden. It was hidden 15 feet under the collapsed temple of Amun. Good problems, I'd say, Like, there's treasure in the way of finding that treasure. Where do I even start? A project led by the European Institute for Underwater Archaeology, a lot of words, obviously kept searching, so they also found a 4th century Greek funerary area. Yeah, ancient graveyards underwater. Guy, watch a movie. This is how you get cursed. Let's move on. Number 5, Vasa shipwreck. Back in 1628, the Vasa sunk within 20 minutes of setting sail, and it claimed the lives of 30 souls on board. Pretty tragic. The Swedish Navy launched the ship August 10th, 1628, and at this time it was considered a high-tech warship. It was referred to as spectacular. Yeah, they even said it with that accent. Spectacular. I don't even know what accent that was, but they said it like that. So what happened here? Well, the first rush of wind caught it off guard, made it all off balanced, and the second rush of wind completely sank it. No combat, nothing. No icebergs popping out of nowhere. It just sank. There was a crowd around watching the entire thing. They were watching this great, glorious send-off, but the 64 bronze cannons that were installed, during the rushed process to make it look spectacular or whatever, they were too heavy, so the ship sank. The lack of oxygen in the water allowed for its rediscovery to continue its story. The Vasa was built with carvings all around the king at the time, who was King Gustav II. So when the wreck was rediscovered in 1961, I say recent, this is pretty recent, 95% of the wood was still perfectly intact. Yeah, I had to talk about this. This is amazing. Humans are focusing too much on naval warfare rather than if the ship can actually, stay afloat. I can't tell if this is a curse or just humans being humans. Number 4, Luxor tombs. Oh man, I wish this happened while I was in high school. I would have done so many projects on this as it unfolded. That would have been sweet. Back in 2014, quite recent, archaeologists discovered a 4,000-year-old tomb from the 11th dynasty tucked away in, you guessed it, Luxor, Egypt. That's like the ultimate find right there. A Spanish archaeologist found the tomb belonging to the leader from the 11th dynasty. And it was pretty obvious this was somebody from the royal family. Officials believe the tomb may have been used as a mass grave, you know, due to the large amounts of human remains found inside. That's definitely one way to tell, that's for sure helpful. It's important to note that this tomb had also been used during the 17th dynasty later on, because tools and utensils from that time were also found that were not in existence from prior. See, humans can share, even mass graves, sometimes. Number 3, cursed tablet. Super recent discovery right here, small but mighty. This tablet comes in at just 2 centimeters by 2 centimeters. Discovered only a month ago in the West Bank, this artifact has historians scratching their heads because it's a couple hundred years older than any Hebrew texts. It predates the Dead Sea Scrolls by 1,350 years. So it's pretty old. The ancient letters meant to call God onto anybody who breaks this curse. This little curse. There's around 40 proto-alphabetic letters, early Hebrew writing, all folded onto this little lead tablet. The fact that this small tablet mentions the curse of Yahweh is pretty alarming. Like, what are the odds that we found this exact part? This sediment comes from excavations done in the 80s on Mount Ebal, so many believe this is from the ancient stone structure Joshua's altar, which is dated around 1200 BC. Yeah, a little tablet from the Mountain of Curses. Yeah, just what we need right now. Awesome. Keep it up, guys. Great work. Number 2, the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Israel Antiquities Authority believe they have found the oldest woven basket in history. This basket comes from the Neolithic period, some 10,000 years ago, which is pretty impressive. This basket is made of woven reeds. It predates pottery in the region, and due to the area's hot, dry climate, the basket was able to stay in remarkable shape all this time. It was a pretty nice find in something called the Cave of Horrors. Yeah, I'm not even making that up. It's called the Cave of Horror. Sorry, correction, horror. One singular horror, not horrors. Back in the 60s, the remains of 40 people were found from a long time before, so it makes sense that they didn't rush back to the cave to search for anything else. Now, cut to March 2021, fragments of a Dead Sea Scroll were found in that same cave, the Cave o' Horror. The writing on the scroll are mostly Greek letters with some in Hebrew. Dead Sea Scrolls in a Cave of Horror. Yeah, sounds like I'm making this up. I wish I was, I'm not. And finally, number 1, ancient Greek shipwreck. The oldest shipwreck discovered in the Black Sea, and you would never guess by looking at it. Looks brand new, looks like it just left 4 days ago. This ship is from 400 BC. It's an ancient Greek trading vessel. It's not very large, but somehow this thing is mighty. It has been in great condition for over 2,400 years, over a mile below the surface. Yeah, no light, nothing. Even the fish are like, what is that? The lack of oxygen actually preserved the ship. That's why it looks like it sank a year ago and not, thousands. John Adams, principal investigator with the Black Sea Archaeology Project, describes the finding as something he never thought was even possible, let alone something he'd witnessed in his lifetime.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Carol. An American history professor named Paul Kosuk was absolutely fascinated by ancient settlements, like I'm sure a lot of us are. But this passion led to him devoting much of his time to studying in Peru, which has such an incredibly rich history. In 1948, while in Peru, Paul made the discovery he had been waiting for when he came across the dry remains of an ancient city. The remains were carbon dated and placed to be about 5,000 years old. The city of Carol was once the home to around 3,000 inhabitants pre-Inca, and this was already a thriving location while the pyramids were being built. That is how old the settlement is. It appeared to be quite a peaceful place as there were no obvious signs of battles or weapons, but among the remains were homes, plazas, temples, and even an amphitheater. It is said that the city was abandoned in 2000 BC, and in 2009 AD it was made a World Heritage Site. In our number 9 spot today, we have Iram of the Pillars. This place is also known as Atlantis of the Sands, and it is a lost city or area that is spoken of in the Quran. In the Quran, it is said to be a place that is full of lofty buildings, and it was populated by a group known as Ad. This group had turned away from Allah, so the prophet Hud was sent to summon them back. The people did not listen or obey, and as a result, it is said that they were punished with a sandstorm being sent to the area for 7 days and 7 nights. In the end, the city is said to have vanished beneath the sands as if it never even existed. In the 1990s, a team, which was led by Nicholas Clapp, who is an amateur archaeologist and filmmaker, announced that they had found this lost city. It is said that this was done using NASA's remote sensing satellites, ground-penetrating radar, and images taken by the Space Shuttle Challenger. These tools gave them the opportunity to see old camel trade routes and where they all once once converged. This point is a well-known area, and once excavated, it is said to have revealed the area known as Iram of the Pillars. In our number 8 spot today, we have Heraklion, also known as Thonis to the Egyptians. This was an ancient city that was located near the mouth of the Nile River. Greek legend says that this was the city where Hercules took his first steps into Africa, as well as the place where Paris hid Helen before the Trojan War began. This is all to say that, to legend, the city was super important, but aside from legend, no one knew where this place was or how to find it. Well, just over 2,000 years ago, it turns out that either an earthquake, a tsunami, or a combination of the two hit the city and submerged it underwater. It used to be believed that Thonis and Heraklion were two separate places and that they were both located on what is now Egyptian mainland, but neither of those things turned out to be true. In reality, in 1999, after 5 years of searching, archaeologist Frank Gaudio located the ruins of the city underwater as they had been submerged in the ocean. Since then, excavations and explorations of the ancient city have taken place, and it was stocked full of some incredibly cool treasures from thousands of years ago. In 2010, a type of ancient Nile riverboat was found here, and even not too long ago, in August of 2021, it was announced that wicker baskets that contained fruits of the doom palm tree, as well as grape seeds that date back to the earliest 4th century BC, had been found among the ruins. In our number 7 spot today, we have Arctic hyenas, changing it up a bit to ancient remains. Only a few years ago, scientists discovered teeth. Ancient teeth from Arctic hyenas. When you think of hyenas, you wouldn't ever imagine that they once roamed over Europe and Asia, but 5 million years ago, that was normal everyday life for these bad boys. Remains of these Arctic beasts have been found mainly in the Yukon permafrost. Evolutionary biologist Jack Zhang studies prehistoric carnivores, and he knew within minutes that these recent Yukon molars belonged to Arctic hyenas, aka Chasmaporthets. We'll go with that. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Crusader Sword. Get your goggles on for this next one, folks. We are going deep. I found a few shells in my life, but never a sword that once belonged to a Crusader knight. That's just next level. An Israeli scuba diver, not even that far experienced, ended up stumbling across one of the coolest discoveries in 2021. Shlomi Katzin was diving off the Carmel coast in Israel when this peculiar shape caught their eye. As if a Crusader sword wasn't enough, the diver also found anchors, ancient stones, pottery fragments, all from around 900 years ago. I wouldn't even notice this. It's covered in barnacles. I wouldn't even dare go near it to begin with. Kudos. Great catch. In our number 5 spot today, we have toxic waste. Despite what Smash Mouth preaches, all that glitters is not gold. Sometimes we find ancient swords, and sometimes we find literal barrels of waste. This dump site here was first discovered off the coast of LA, 3,000 feet deep, hiding in plain sight. These ROVs found roughly 27,000 barrels of toxic waste. This feels like a Simpsons episode. It's absolutely insane. What a horrible discovery. The 2021 find was deemed staggering. Yeah, that's a word you can say, for sure. In our number 4 spot today, we have Mohenjo-Daro. This is a location whose name is said to roughly translate to, quote, Mound of the Dead Men. This is one of the world's oldest urban settlements, as it was found and built somewhere around 2600 to 2500 BC in what is now Pakistan, but it was abandoned in the 19th century BC as the civilization that called this place home declined. For almost 4,000 years, this site was seemingly forgotten about, and the remains of it were undocumented until an officer of the Archaeological Survey of India, R.D. Banerjee, visited the site in 1920 and found a flint scraper which convinced him of the site's history. From here, excavations of the site began, and as of the 1980s, it was named a World Heritage Site. In our number 3 spot today, we have Wolverine Fish. Hugh Jackman, if you're watching, this one's for you. This year alone, there have been over 212 discoveries of brand new freshwater fish. We love a new fish. That's super exciting. One of which is the X-Men inspired Hopalensistris wolverine. These fish have strong lateral curved spikes called odontos tucked under their gills. They can extend and jab their prey with prongs, hence why the name Wolverine is added to the fish's name. It's kind of cute. It has the claws, which is terrifying, sure, but he's okay. I do kind of love him. In our number 2 spot today, we have the million-year-old plant. Back in 2019 in Greenland, a preserved fossil of a million-year-old plant was discovered. This was found under the ice near a secret Cold War military camp. An ancient flower founded a Cold War military camp. What a headline. In 1959, Project Iceworm was underway. I have mentioned this before, and that in itself is a pretty bizarre frozen feature in history. Eventually the project was scrapped and it was abandoned, but cut to 2019 it was rediscovered and scientists at the University of Vermont found parts of a million-year-old plant. Not what you'd expect to find under a secret Cold War base. You know, the fragments were so well preserved that it looked like it had died recently. Not, you know, a million years ago. Studying these plants can provide clues on our future and where our current plants might just end up. In our number 1 spot today we have Ice Age art. Well, to end off this list we have some ancient artwork. This Ice Age masterpiece was painted in the Colombian Amazon. The thing is, unlike other drawings found on the ceilings of tombs, this canvas stretches about 8 miles. It's incredibly long for an ancient painting, and for a modern painting, now that I think of it. These drawings date back to 12,000 years ago, near the end of the last ice age. These were found in 2018, but it was only last year when they went public with the findings. The findings being paintings of elephants, giant sloths, horses, snakes, birds, and deer. This is now one of the largest collections of rock art in South America.
Number 10. Roman sea curses. Okay, the 1st century, a great place to begin with most things that are horrible and new to humans. Romans did things a little differently. We can't figure out yet how they engineered aqueducts or how that many people watch Colosseum battles. Yeah, I can't watch an armbar during UFC, let alone bring my family to the Colosseum. Be like, that's a lion. That's a guy getting eaten by the lion. Yeah, it's him. Ancient Roman naturalist Pliny the Elder, he wrote a book on natural history, and in said book, this go-to, might I add, on ancient history, the Elder wrote about half-human, half-fish creatures that he called Nereids. That sounds like mermaids? Avatar? I don't even know. Atlanteans? He even added to his first observation detailing that the human parts of said body were covered in rough scales. Human in appearance, but still fishy nonetheless. Awesome. Guess we have those to look forward to. The Elder also recalls a seaman who would climb ships at night and then sink them. Kind of like Aquaman, only he wouldn't help people. He would actually put them in life-threatening situations. But still cool. He probably looked like a climbing that ship, you know? Number 9. Sirens, aka mermaids. Here we go, figured I'd talk about these ones as well. The mythology surrounding sirens, it's interesting, but I don't know how I feel about it yet. We have to talk about it in the comments. I don't think we have Atlanteans flirting with sailors per se, but I do believe there's some sort of creature that's hybrid human fish, you know what I mean? On his first trip overseas in 1493, Christopher Columbus claims to have seen not 1, but 3 sirens. Yeah, he even wrote about it. He said they rose well out of the sea, but they are not so beautiful as they are said to be. Okay, he's rhyming, that's always fun, thank you Columbus. For their faces had some masculine traits, that's what he added afterwards. I would think I'd be a very cute mermaid, honestly, thank you so much. I could probably trick Christopher Columbus and be like, hey, come to this island, just wave in and do my little fish thing, whatever. So what did Christopher Columbus see? I mean, when it comes to correctly identifying places and or people, obviously Chris can get confused. He's not really our go-to guy, I don't think anymore. So historians believe Columbus may have seen a few manatees and not mermaids. Either way, I'm like, you know what? Both are kind of terrifying to see out of nowhere. Number 8. The Kraken. For ages now, sailors from Norway and Greenland have shared tales of this giant sea monster, and you've probably heard about it as well. Or if you've seen the hit franchise, Pirates of the Caribbean, you've probably seen it in IMAX. Tentacles big enough to pluck you out of your boat. This thing is terrifying, right? We all know about the Kraken. In 1857, Danish naturalist Japetus Steenstrup found a large squid beak, and soon after was sent parts of another specimen from the Bahamas, okay? So something was out there. He concludes that the Kraken is real and that this was proof, and that these parts were maybe part of a species of giant squid called Architeuthis ducks, which translates to ruling squid in Latin. Very little is known about giant ruling squid, of course because they're so hard to track, but we did get a photo of one in 2005 and a video of another in 2013. Number 7. Yellow Brick Road. Deep sea divers may have found the road to Atlantis, or Oz, one of the two. Back in May 2022, this bizarre path was spotted in the Pacific after an exploration vessel, Nautilus, caught the rocky formation near Hawaii. Just a nice place of unknown everything in that ocean. Awesome, we love exploring. The exploration team said in a recent interview with WION News that our corps of exploration have witnessed incredibly unique and fascinating geological formations while diving on the Liliuokalani Ridge. The 90-degree fractures are most likely the results from, you know, a big eruption from a volcano a long long time ago. The Marine National Monument, or PNMM for short, is the largest fully protected conservation area in the world. So let's not litter anymore, maybe, I don't know. It covers more than 580,000 square miles in the ocean. So far we've only discovered 3% of its seafloor, so I'm sure there's many more discoveries of roads, apparently, leading to Atlantis. Let's hope. Number 6, the Great Lakes Griffin. Back in 2018 in Lake Michigan, diver Steve Liebert found what he believed was the holy grail of Great Lakes shipwrecks. Now this is exciting to some, I can't even look at photos, I have thalassophobia. The Griffin sank back in 1679. Divers have been searching for this beauty for a very long time. As a kid, Steve himself, Steve Liebert, was talking about the shipwreck when his history teacher stopped and said, "Hey, who knows, maybe one of you will find the Griffin." Imagine that, your grade 8 teacher tells you somebody will find a ship one day and that somebody was actually you. Yeah, at 76 years old, Steve discovered the wreck. It was 2018, but his research began 40 years ago. Liebert began diving back in 1981 after an amazing teacher got him motivated. It took a long time to track down, of course, but I think it was worth it, we can all agree. If you're in any Great Lakes, keep your eyes open for, 50-foot long ships from the 1600s. They're always lurking below. That's why I can't swim. Like, I put goggles on, look down, and see the top of a ship. I would throw up. I would literally, that's it. Maybe because I'm like afraid of heights, and for some reason when I'm in like the ocean or like a lake, I feel like I'm up high. Maybe that's what it is. Number 5, toxic waste. Okay, we mentioned a yellow brick road. It's always fun, it's a fun time, a creepy looking discovery, but certainly not harmful like this next one here. Yeah, for the back 9, we're gonna crank it up a bit. Sometimes we find literal barrels of waste. This dump site here was discovered off the coast of LA. It's 3,000 feet deep, and these ROVs, these deep ROVs, found around 27,000 barrels of waste. Looks like the climax of a Breaking Bad finale. It's just, what is going on down here? What happened? Who put these here? The 2021 discovery was deemed staggering. Yeah, that's one of many words I can say on YouTube, for sure. You can literally see in these photos like this aura of toxic waste, like just a plume of evil coming from these barrels. That's brutal. Recycle, please. Number 4, the frilled shark. Also alarming, just in its own natural, terrifying way. Back in 2004, marine biologists discovered a dinosaur. Yeah, they discovered the frilled shark. It was lurking around 870 meters below the surface. Now this one looks like an eel, almost. It's so scary, I don't know. Frilled sharks can grow up to 7 feet long, and they fight like Daredevil. They can hunt in complete darkness. They don't have to look, they just use their senses, and they don't use sunlight. I almost got lost there while I was doing that bit, but if I was a frilled shark, I'd be dead on still, I'd be fine. They don't need to see anything, so remember that next time you're skinny dipping. Unless you can hold your breath for a long time, you won't actually run into the frilled shark, so don't worry about that. They're only found a mile below the surface, and again, they're rare as hell. Have you ever dealt one of these? Are you a diver? Have you seen a shark? Comment down below some of your diving nightmares, just so I can read them. And then go, oh, I'm never going in the ocean ever again. That's what I like doing. I like going, ooh, I'm never doing that ever again. That's what Reddit's for. Number 3, the deepest shipwreck. The USS Johnston was a US Navy destroyer which sank during the Battle of Samar back in 1944. It was after a battle with a large fleet of Japanese warships and went down. Now Victor Vescovo, who is one of the few people who has made the dive into the Mariana Trench, that's why his name sounds familiar, he was one of the people who first stumbled upon the remains of this sunken warship. The ship's remains were first found in 2019 and was known as the deepest known shipwreck, as it was found 6,456 meters deep in the Philippine Sea in the Pacific Ocean. I lost track of what I was saying. It's so deep, I can't even imagine. That's like a mountain, you know what I'm saying? We have a new record holder, believe it or not. Yeah, the world's deepest shipwreck was discovered 4 miles underwater in the Philippines. Yeah, this is now the world's deepest shipwreck that was ever discovered. This is terrifying. I want to move on right now. I'm gonna throw up. Number 2, loud ocean heat. This is just naturally and so scary. Here we go. How depressing is this one? Okay, back in 1991, scientists lowered these massive speakers, like nightclub subwoofers almost, into the waters at Heard Island. Also, like Heard Island speakers, is this a bit? I wish I was making this up. They made the pun for me. They did my job. I'm upset. These speakers emitted low frequency sounds all across our oceans. Now these signals were later picked up by receivers near California and Bermuda. And these signals contain information on the temperature of our oceans. Our oceans absorb more than 90% of energy left from global warming. Doesn't help when we lower 27,000 barrels of into it. So let's just maybe stop that for a bit. There were a few scientists who at the time were also concerned about how these low frequency sounds may be affecting our ocean life. Yeah, what does that sound like to a beluga whale? And finally, number 1. the Vasa shipwreck. Back in 1628, the Vasa sunk within 20 minutes of setting sail. This is a tragedy. This claimed the lives of 30 souls on board. How tragic is this? Now, the Swedish Navy launched the ship August 10, 1628. It was once considered a high-tech warship, even referred to as spectacular. So what the hell happened? Well, the first rush of wind caught it off guard, started making a little topsy-turvy, and the second gush of wind sank it. Just like that. There was no war, there was nothing going on, just a bottle of clink, and then it went down. So fast. It's like the scene in Shrek where it sinks fast comedically, but this was real life, so it wasn't comedic at all. It was actually rather terrifying. There was a crowd around and everything to send it off, but the 64 bronze cannons that were installed during the rushed process of building the warship, they were deemed too heavy, evidently. The lack of oxygen in the water allowed for its rediscovery to continue its story. That's how we know how she went down. The Vasa was built with carvings all around the king at the time, King Gustav II. So when the wreck was discovered in 1961, 95% of the wood was still intact. It's deep, dark, and cold. Yeah, nothing really, nothing affects it. Humans focusing too much on naval warfare rather on if the ship can actually stay afloat. That's definitely a human problem. I can't tell if this is a curse or just humans being humans, but yeah, stop installing 64 bronze cannons.
Number 10, the Iceman. Otzi the Iceman is a mummified body of a man who lived in Europe around 3000 BC. Pretty long ago. Dude was chilling in the ice until we came across him in the Italian Alps and said, yep, this should be in a museum. Lots of studying was being done, and rightfully so. And for the people in that career field, that's very exciting. Lots of talking on how this poor man ended up there. One study suggests that a rather violent end as an arrowhead was found in his shoulder, meaning somebody gotsy Otzi. More troubling than that bad pun, however, is that mysteriously some folks who were working and salivating over the thought of studying more of poor Otzi, they also got Gotsy, passed away. One after another, actually. Is it connected? Maybe, maybe not, but I know that the common denominator here was finding a dude in the ice, and I haven't done that. I'm still here, still breathing, hi. Number 9, cursed Maori masks. Maori warriors, not something that's talked about too much, actually. I don't know why, they're pretty cool. The Maoris are indigenous Polynesian peoples who settled New Zealand. Easy, simple, to the point. Some might say, I'm just a simple man trying to make my way in the universe. Good Star Wars reference, see if you get that. Well, if you find yourself visiting a museum in the Wellington area, then best be careful because the Maori masks that are on display are said to be cursed. Who would have thought? So much so that it's advised that pregnant and menstruating women keep their distance. What? Maori tradition dictates that these women are taboo? Thus, it could have a curse put upon them. Does it make sense? No. Do I agree with it? No. Is it weird? Yes. Am I going to test this theory? No. If you're pregnant, don't need the display case, right? You catch something real bad. Number 8, Bassano vase. Vases, vases, fugazi fugats, whatever, I don't know how it's pronounced. My mom wouldn't let me near them as a kid. Okay, sure, I was loud and normally a walking disaster, but never in my rambunctious youth did I ever break something. I was a good boy, I swear. Well, maybe one vase I should have broken was the Bassano vase, a silver carved vase that was to be given to a bride on her wedding night in Napoli back in the 1500s. Trouble is, she was de-lifed, and the vase was handed down to her family. Trouble is, every time someone gets the vase, they end up 6 feet under. Or at least another family member does. It's kind of like the letter in Saving Private Ryan. Anyone who holds the letter to Vin Diesel's dad gets a German bullet with their name on it. Seriously, go back and watch the movie. You gotta go see it. Every time someone gets the letter from Vin Diesel, they croak. I'm telling you, you're gonna notice it. You're like, wow, Chetty was right. Eventually, the family told the police to take it away before it claimed another life. A weird story, just strange. Number 7, Oak Island. Everyone loves reality television, even just a little bit. If we didn't, the last 25 years of television wouldn't exist. Now, it's not my favorite thing to watch, but as a man, sometimes you just gotta watch other dudes forge metal and swords and say to yourself, yeah, I can do that. We're weird. Well, what if I told you a cursed island has its own reality TV show? Yes, The Curse of Oak Island. Basically, it's a show where two brothers who equally look like they could be your dad dig tons of holes on a Nova Scotian island to find what treasure lies there. That's pretty much the story behind the show. There's an island in Nova Scotia that's said to be buried treasure there, and this has been enough for a reason for prospectors to be looking for close to 100 years. And that's the truth. Now, naturally, bad things happen to those who look. More interesting than that is the theories of what's actually buried there. Some people say it's Templar treasure, the Holy Grail, pretty ancient, the Ark of the Covenant, weird, something to do with the Freemasons, Imperial British loot. Errol Flynn, John Wayne, and FDR were just some of the men interested in my Neighbors to the East treasure. That's a weird story. Ark of the Covenant, FDR, Errol Flynn? What? That's strange. In that hole, pilgrim. Number 6, burial sites. Alright, folks at home, this one you're gonna have to help me out with. Let me know in the comments, but this point is all about Indian Aboriginal burial grounds. Some of you folks in the Midwest, or perhaps in the desert states, have tales of when someone gave you or found an item from a burial ground and disturbed the grounds themselves, and after that happens, some mysterious things started to happen. Now this one is kind of a broad stroke because there's just too many incidents to talk about. There's been theme parks, suburban homes, it just seems nothing is safe after the sacred grounds have been disturbed. So to prevent my home from filling up with blood like that scene in The Shining, I will leave these areas alone. You know, I hear living out in the ocean is great these days. Lots of sunshine, water, all the fish you can eat, and poltergeist incidents are at an all-time low. However, shark attacks are up. You gotta do it with the sharks. Just saying. Number 5, Chinese pyramids. Yeah, I know. I said that too. I had no idea these even existed. So the question you really have to ask yourself is what's worse than opening a sealed Egyptian tomb and pyramids, which we really shouldn't have been doing in the first place? Well, the answer is opening ancient Chinese tombs and pyramids, because we don't know what's going on in those bad boys. Sure, they're not as extravagant as the pyramids in Egypt, and the Egypt ones will always be number 1, it's just how it goes, but they're still mysterious. Plus, you can't compare the two. It would be like comparing Adam and me. We're both good at different things, we're both cute, both funny, he just happens to eat more glue out of a bottle than I do. Dude loves a good bottle of Elmer's, what can I say? I prefer wine. The reason why we don't know much about these mounds and pyramids is because some are still being discovered, and it was a long time ago. That's always a big factor. And of course, the Chinese government loves their secrets, so watch out. Number 4, catacombs in Paris. I can already hear the comments. I can just see them now. I'll talk about how weird and strange the catacombs of France are, and someone's gonna go full goth on me and say, Chitty, it's kinda cool to me actually, I don't think it's that weird. Okay, yeah, it is kinda weird though. Now, it's one thing to disturb a burial ground, but another to visit thousands upon thousands of skulls just for the heck of it. When researching the subject of the Paris catacombs, the first thing that came up was a travel website that described it as maximum fun. The chief called, he said, "Ce n'est pas ça," which means it is not it. Yeah, there's like 6 million people buried there. It's kind of crazy. Just, if you want to go visit, go ahead. But the travel website actually said that. Do you believe that?
Maximum fun, bring the kids. It'll be great. And this is the skull of another skull, and there's another skull.
Like, why would you bring the kids to that? I don't know. Take them to an aquarium. Number 3, the Winchester House. Okay, kind of a stretch in this one, I know. But honestly, this bad boy should be boarded up for good. Pour some concrete in there. Just extra thick nails, just for good measure. You never know. The Winchester House is a large property that belonged to the Winchester family of Winchester rifle fame. If you've ever seen a Western movie, video game, or heard your grandpa talk about it, then, well, you know what a Winchester rifle is. It's the rifle that settled the West. I'm sure our American audience needs no introduction. When someone comes along and reinvents the wheel, that person usually gets quite wealthy, as did the Winchester family. However, Mrs. Winchester had some bad luck. Family members perished, and it was thought to be because the family rifle had taken so many lives of its own. It's one thing to have a catacomb filled with skulls, but imagine if you're the reason why it's filling up. Come on, guys. Number 2, Egyptian gold. Besides the dude wrapped up in bandages chilling in a sarcophagus, there were other things left for the king in the afterlife. You might find his doggy or his kitty, jars of pickled pharaoh guts, jars and more vases. Maybe not the one from before, but lots of vases. But the most important thing you can find in there is treasures, gold, jewels, jewelry, valuables, and pretty much really anything of value. Plus, the pyramids kind of act like a car wash for valuables. For example, I could sell you a solid gold necklace, let's say for $1,000. Very nice indeed. And for the men out there, it's been a tough couple years. Let's treat the ladies this Christmas. Get them what they need. Gold necklace, you're welcome, ladies. But what if I told you the necklace I was trying to sell you once lay in the tomb for thousands of years? Oh baby, those prices are gonna get jacked up like my high school jalopy. She was rough. The point I'm getting here is no matter how much you want to ditch the high school car for something new, don't rob the grave of a powerful king. It'll come back to bite us. I just know it. If you open the tomb and there's money in there, close it, walk away. Come watch me instead, walk away from it. Don't do it. And number 1, Ayers Rock. I'm gonna be brief with this one because it's very simple. The point stands. Ayers Rock, Australia, the outback. Gorgeous place. Maybe one day I'll get to do a comedy tour down under. Look out, Aussies, I'm coming. The rock is a natural wonder and connected spiritually to the Aboriginals of the area. So when people are told not to take anything from the limestone natural site, even something as little as a rock, people still do it. And when they do it, they experience a lot of bad luck and they're forced to return it. So what's the lesson? Don't take anything. Don't do it. Not you're thinking about it. Don't do it. I'm telling you, don't do it. Naughty, don't do it.
Number 10. Inca Mummies. Right off the hop, we got a 3-in-1. Buckle up, folks. March 16th, 1999, right near the summit of Lililaiko, so around 7,000 meters up in the sky, near Argentina and Chile borders. Right all the way up there, ancient history, it appears it was just waiting frozen in the cold. It was waiting in the form of 3 Inca mummies. Further studies found that they were most likely sacrificed in the name of some sort of religious Inca ritual around the year 1500 CE. It's quite a long time ago. They were found in a small opening less than 2 meters under the ground. Now again, this discovery was shocking. They looked like they were just asleep. That's what being frozen does to you. It makes your body look nice and fresh all the time. But in reality, they'd passed around, the 1500s. They're some of the most well-preserved mummies in the world. They now rest at an exhibition in the Museum of High Altitude Archaeology in Salta, Argentina. So if you're ever in Salta, there you go. Number 9, giant beaver skull. Big beavers, you say? All right, hit that thumbs up. So the Yukon permafrost, it seems to be a hot spot of sorts. As it should be. Lots of ancient animals just got stuck in time, and of course in great condition, lucky for us. Scientific name for giant beavers back then was Castroides ohainus. The giant beaver was on average larger than humans. As Jurassic Park as this thing looks, it only ate pond weeds. It was a gentle giant. He was a fan of the salads, it seems. Hold the beef. You would think otherwise looking at it. It looks like a monster. One of the largest rodents in history, rather. They were probably really cute. I'm not gonna lie, they look kinda nice, at least on Google. 50,000 years ago, they didn't chop down trees, just weeds. It's kinda nice. Smaller beavers outlived them once conditions warmed up. Like others on this list, they moved north. They followed the ideal conditions, and that led them ultimately to their icy demise. That is, well, more often than not, the Yukon permafrost. Number 8, Surgeon Notebook. All right, all you nerds, get your old textbooks out for this one. Whenever explorers find notebooks, I'm always so interested. Even in video games, that's not even the boring mission for me, I'm like, yeah, let's find those ancient scrolls. Let's do that first. It feels very national treasure to me to find ancient notes from somebody that they wrote. This notebook here once belonged to a surgeon a long time ago. It's over 100 years old, and it was found in a frozen hut in Antarctica. The owner was that of George Levick. He was a photographer and a surgeon who traveled with the last expedition of Robert Scott. This was from 1910 to 1913. Also, what a 2-for-1 combo. Guys, 2 amazing jobs. So different. The book itself was completely frozen shut and the bindings were toast, but the parts that they can read today is pretty historical. Thanks to that frozen stuff, it actually survived a lot of conditions. You could still read descriptions of photos George took at Cape Adare. That's history right there. Number 7, Antarctica Pyramid. Okay, here we go. A little bit of alien stuff. Why not? Here on Bumblebee, we like talking about the pyramids of Egypt a lot. We're fascinated with all things ancient and history. Once I heard about pyramids in Antarctica, I had to know what was going on. This was back in 2016, where a mountain in Antarctica was trending online all of a sudden. Now, we all immediately thought it was evidence of an ancient civilization because, well, that's what we want to see, right? That's what we're hoping for every time we hit refresh on that history channel. Eric Rignott, a professor of Earth System Sciences at the University of California, reached out to Live Science when this was all unfolding. He added the quote, "Pyramid shapes are not impossible. Many peaks partially look like pyramids, but they only have 1 or 2 faces like that. Rarely 4. So just a rare anomaly, just a rare frozen anomaly, or I don't know, maybe there's some frozen space aliens." Number 6, Grasshopper Glacier. Yeah, if you aren't a fan of bugs, you can go ahead and skip to number 5. I will not take it personally. Just hit the thumbs up at least, do something. A glacier in Montana is home to thousands, millions, I don't even want to know how many, grasshoppers and locusts, just all stuck in time right here. Yeah, imagine heading to a glacier and you forget bug spray. What an idiot. Well, appropriately named Grasshopper Glacier, this mile-long glacier near Crook City holds the remains of extinct giant grasshoppers. Yeah, they're dead and frozen and gone, but you can still see them, which is not great. These poor guys were traveling to find new life a long time ago, and they must have gotten caught up in some cold winds, and now they're stuck here for another few hundred years. This reminds me of those suckers that have the little insect inside. Who actually buys those, you know what I mean? You see them in gift shops a lot, scorpion inside, like, nice. One lick and I'm done. Number 5. Preserved wolf pup. When this little lady went into the ice 57,000 years ago, I bet she had no idea that she'd ever see the sun again. That's a long time ago. Discovered in, you guessed it, Yukon, Canada, Zur is the most complete wolf mummy that has ever been found. She's incredibly intact. She was discovered in 2016 by a gold miner while they were blasting water out of frozen mud. He was like, "Yeah, wait, stop, hold on." And they found this. They thought it was treasure, but really it was just this little lady. Also treasured, you know, I take that back. She's also treasured. They did find treasure. X-rays tell us she was only 6 weeks old. X-rays also tell us that she was a fan of fish. That was her meal of choice. She loved eating fish. Poor thing, damn. I'm looking down like it's there. I'm like, we really missed you. All right, close the casket. Let's get out of here. Number 4, frozen treasure. Here we go. Is it a wolf pup or is it actually frozen treasure? Because Buddy's asking. As far as frozen treasure goes, this is very recent. You know, we don't find these often. Treasure frozen in ice, again, sounds like something out of a video game. I can't help it, this is so intriguing. Back in 2013, an anonymous mountain climber, can't imagine why they chose to stay hidden, they stumbled across a small box filled with jewels, just jammed in the ice. Now, they had to breathe on it a little bit, you know, melt it out, pop it out a little bit, whatever. But once it was done, they reported it to French officers. Now this box contained around 100 precious gems. Precious gems. This was quite the find. Emeralds, sapphires, rupees, you name it. This box was worth 300,000 US dollars, roughly. I find a 20 on the ground, I'm like, that's it, I'm calling in sick. I find a toonie under the ice, I'm like, I'll wait till this melts. Well, since it was discovered on Mont Blanc, officials were able to trace down the lost gems back to an Air India flight that actually crashed on the mountain back in 1966. That's where this came from. The lives of 117 passengers were sadly lost, and because of the harsh conditions, it's been next to impossible to have recovered anything from the mountain, especially that long ago, right? No one wants to climb and do any of that, it's impossible. Now, somehow these family gems were able to see light again as well, and yes, the owner did return the gems. Thing is, 2 families claimed the goods. I'm surprised there's not more, to be honest with you. Interestingly enough, in 2014, a French treasure hunter, Daniel Roche, found 50 more pieces of jewelry from the same glacier. So, yeah, some glaciers are filled with bugs, other glaciers filled with gems. So, 50-50 really, you never know what you're gonna get. Just lick and hope. Actually, don't do that, you'll get a sore throat. Number 3, the Glacier Girl. Before you get worried, no, this next one is not a real person at any time. The next one here is a plane, a P-23 aircraft to be specific. It was discovered in Greenland, surrounded of course in ice. Now during World War II in July 1942, 6 P-38 fighter planes were ordered to make an emergency landing in Greenland due to lousy weather conditions and of course low visibility. The crew was saved, but the Lockheed had to be abandoned, never to be seen again for 50 years. It was then dug out of a 264 feet bank of snow and ice, and it took years to finally get this plane back out. She's known now as the Glacier Girl, and in 2007, Lewis Energy CEO, Rodney Lewis, he bought that plane. Can you imagine having that kind of money? You're buying ancient frozen planes? Like, it doesn't work, you know that, right? All right, cool, rich guys. Number 2, Blood Red Waterfall. We've all seen that video or photo of the waterfall that's underwater. It's a nice little optical illusion, looks kind of scary. Never want to swim again after seeing that. The Blood Red Waterfall is a little more jarring. On the southern side of our planet, there's a waterfall in Antarctica that is blood red. It is haunting to look at. I don't ever want to see this in person or on the internet again for that matter. The edge of Taylor Glacier, great name for a glacier, my god. This is a one-of-a-kind waterfall that pours into Lake Bonny. So millions of years ago, when sea levels rose up, glaciers naturally formed at the top of the lake. So this melting water that's slowly leaking out from a quarter-mile deep, this water is now 3 times saltier and 3 times as scary to look at. When the iron-rich water then reached the air, it looked bloody. I mean, more than fair. Just seeing photos of this, it's jarring. It looks like there's a lot of healthy iron pouring out of there. Number 1, fish eat fish. This one's kind of funny, you know, funny timing. We gotta finish on a nice, is that a real photo? We gotta finish on one of those. If you know anything about me, it's that I'm not a fan of lakes or oceans or anything underwater. I'm good. Land, beaches, plains, perfect. Let's do that. This video went viral not too long ago and it is very real. These 2 brothers were fishing on Indiana's Wawasee Lake and they saw a pike eating a bass, only both parties were completely still because they were both already dead and both completely frozen. Mid-meal, this guy's got a fish in his mouth, frozen in time. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We found this. This is a real thing. They posted the original photo and nobody believed that it was real, so they had to follow up and post the video where they actually remove it from the ice. So Totally official. I would also think this is fake too. It looks like a meme that you'll have in the back of a class where it's like, hey, always a bigger fish, don't give up, or something weird like that. Like Will Smith with a thumbs up next to like a glacier. You're like, is this motivation? I don't know, this is weird. Number 10, a frozen bird. Back in 2018, an extremely well-preserved bird was found in northeastern Siberia. This is fascinating. It was found near the village of Balea Gora, and the bird itself was quite hidden, which explains its incredible preservation. It was found 150 meters into an ice tunnel, and the fascinating thing here, other than of course the, mummified bird, is that it looks like it died maybe a week ago, maybe 2. If I found this, I wouldn't look twice, to be honest. I would be like, ew, and I'd walk the other way. It's just a dead bird. Looks like a normal dead bird. Thing is, this bird froze 48,000 years ago. Yeah. Studying the birdo's DNA has given researchers insight on the end of the last ice age, so yeah, he's bringing some science, bringing some facts out of his, frozen corpse. Number 9, preserved wolf pup. When this little lady went into the ice 57,000 years ago, I bet she had no idea she would ever see the sunlight ever again. Discovered in Yukon, Canada, what's up? Zur is the most complete wolf mummy that has ever been found. Period. Not bad. Not bad, Canada. Okay, I see you. She's incredibly intact. She was discovered in 2016 by a gold miner while they were blasting water at frozen mud. What a job that ought to be, eh? Just blasting out history. They thought it was treasure, but really it was just this little lady instead, which in my opinion, still treasure. She's still a treasured, valued soul. She's quite old to us, but when she went into the ice, X-ray tells us she was only 6 weeks old. She was just a little baby, a little bubble. X-rays showed that she also loved fish, so she had an appetite as well before, life happened. Number 8, surgeon notebook. Whenever explorers find notebooks, I'm so interested, right? It's like history, written private history, just tucked away. It's fascinating. Maybe I've played too much Zelda, I don't know. But notebooks feel very, national treasure to me. You know what I'm saying? Hold it up to the light, see if it I like secrets. This notebook here once belonged to a surgeon. Now it's well over 100 years old. It was found in a frozen hut in Antarctica, and the owner was George Levick. He was a photographer and a surgeon, doubled as both, nice, fancy, and he traveled with the last expedition of Robert Scott. This was from 1910 to 1913. The book itself was completely frozen and the bindings were toast, obviously, but the parts that they can read today is pretty historical. You can still read descriptions of photos George took at Cape Adair. Descriptions of photos, that's, it's not the actual photo, but it's close enough. Imagine in 100 years you find a notebook and it's mine, just a bunch of cool S's, those like triangle of cool S's. I'm gonna draw one right now. Number 7, million-year-old plant. Back in 2019 in Greenland, a preserved fossil of a million-year-old plant was discovered, and it looks a little nice. It was tucked away under the ice near a secret Cold War military camp. An ancient flower was found at a Cold War military camp. What a headline that is. Look, that's a message. That's definitely a message. In 1959, Project Iceworm was underway. I've mentioned this before, I'm sure, on this channel, and that in itself is a pretty bizarre frozen feature in history. Now, eventually, said project was scrapped and it was abandoned fully, but cut to 2019, it was rediscovered. Scientists at the University of Vermont found parts of a million-year-old plant just lying around, which is honestly not what they expected to find under a secret Cold War base. They're like, oh, that's actually quite lovely and not haunting and military. Nice. We love that. The fragments were so well preserved that it looked like it died recently, not a million years old. This would make for a great corsage. If you're going to prom and you're Captain America, this would be kind of fitting. Shout out to Captain America. He always comments on our videos. You're an OG. Studying these plants also can provide us clues on our future and where our current plants might end up. Frozen and lost to history, apparently. Can't wait. Number 6, frozen treasure. As far as frozen treasure goes, this is very recent. We don't find these often. Treasure frozen in ice. This sounds like something from Ocarina of Time. Again, I want to throw a heat arrow at it and watch it melt. What's inside? Let's do it. Back in 2013, an anonymous mountain climber, can't imagine why they chose to stay hidden, they stumbled across this box. This box filled with jewels that was just jammed in the ice. Yeah, they had to breathe on it a bit, melt it up, but alas, once reported to the French officers, this box contained around 100 precious gems. This was quite the find. Emeralds, sapphires, rupees. This thing was worth at least $300,000 US, roughly. I find a 20 on the ground, that's it. I'm calling in sick. I'm rich, I won the lottery. So where did this treasure come from? Well, since it was discovered on Mount Blanc, officials were able to trace the lost gems back to an Air India flight that sadly crashed on the mountain back in 1966. Of course, the lives of 117 passengers were lost, and because of the conditions, it's been next to impossible to recover anything from the mountain, especially that long ago, right? It's buried. Somehow, these family gems were able to see the light again. And yes, the owner did return the gems. Only 2 families claimed the goods, so, They gotta fight it out, I guess. Interestingly enough, in 2014, a French treasure hunter, Daniel Roche, found 50 more pieces of jewelry from the same glacier, so I don't know, start licking that ice. You might find some diamonds, who knows. How many licks does it take to get rich? Start breathing on it, pull out a 5, I'm like, yes, it's worth it. Number 5, 90 million year old rainforest. Yeah, we talked about flowers, but now let's get some more flowers in there. Back in 2020, while we were all catching up on Ozark, fossil traces in West Antarctica were discovered. Now this time, it wasn't a giant beaver or a bloody waterfall or anything weird. This time, it was lovely. This time, it was an ancient rainforest. 90 million years ago, when dinosaurs walked the planet, Antarctica was a paradise, honestly. Researchers compare Antarctica in the Cretaceous period to New Zealand today, with most days on average of 12 degrees Celsius. You know, it's like Seattle. I like how scientists compare eras with modern day cities. They're like, oh, the Ice Age? Yeah, a lot of Regina energy over there, a lot of burr, a lot of Regina burr, a lot of Western Canada. I mean, that's where we end up finding them, so yeah, I guess that does make sense. Number 4, the Glacier Girl. Okay, before you get worried, this next one here is a plane, not a frozen woman, so you can resume your calmness. A P-23 aircraft was discovered in Greenland, surrounded, of course, frozen in ice. Who would have thought? During World War II, July 1942, 6 P-38 fighter planes were ordered to make an emergency landing in Greenland due to lousy weather conditions and, of course, therefore, low visibility. The crew was saved, but the Lockheed had to be abandoned, never to be seen again for 50 years. It was then dug out of 264 feet of snow and ice. It took years to get this plane back up, and she's now known as the Glacier Girl. And in 2007, Lewis Energy CEO Rodney Lewis bought the plane just because he just wanted it, wanted a plane, wanted a frozen glacier gal. Number 3, Grasshopper Glacier. Okay, time to get into a little bit of the gross, shall we? So, wouldn't be a Taylor McWaters list if there weren't bugs in it. Yeah, if you're not a fan of bugs, you can go ahead and skip this one. I'm not gonna take it personally. I'll save my jokes for the next one. A glacier in Montana is home to many grasshoppers and locusts. Yeah, frozen locusts. That's a fun word to say. Yeah, imagine heading to a glacier and you forget bug spray. Yeah, what a fool. You didn't think? Appropriately named Grasshopper Glacier, nice, the mile-long glacier near Crook City holds the remains of extinct grasshoppers. A lot of remains of grasshoppers. These poor guys were traveling to find new life, and they must have got caught up in a blizzard or two. Now they're stuck here for another few 100,000 years or so. This reminds me of those suckers that have like a gross bug in the center. You know, like those like popsicles that have like a scorpion inside, and you're like, oh, interesting. Who buys those? No one buys those, right? Number 2, Western Camel Bones. Scientific name being Camelops hasturnus, meaning yesterday's camel in Latin. These bones first appeared in 2008 when gold miners were working in Hunter Creek, just 60 miles away from the Alaskan border, when they stumbled across these fabulous bones. What a weird sentence to say. These fabulous bones. Someone walks in, I'm like, it's animals. The last time these bones were operating, you know, on living meat, was 75 to 125,000 years ago. The remains were in such great condition because of the awful surrounding ones. It was so cold that scientists could actually extract DNA still. DNA that told us that 10 million years ago, roughly, Western camels split from modern day camels. Long time ago, they were just like, you know what? No. How about that? And finally, number 1, Antarctica Pyramid. I talk about the pyramids of Egypt a lot, so I gotta mix it up a little bit, right? Once I heard about pyramids in Antarctica, I knew what was going on, right? Aliens, confirmed. Pretty much. Save the best for last. Back in 2016, a mountain in Antarctica was trending online, and we all immediately thought it was evidence of an ancient civilization because, well, that's what we want to see, right? That's what we're waiting for. Eric Rignot, a professor at the University of California, reached out to Live Science when this was all unfolding in real time, adding that, quote, pyramid shapes are not impossible. Many peaks partially look like pyramids, but they only have 1 or 2 faces like that. Rarely 4. So this one has 4. I don't know. Aliens? Frozen aliens? Just a coincidence? Who knows? I like to finish on a who knows.
Number 10, the Endurance. This one is just incredible. Enter the time of adventurers, when setting sail with a crew of hardy men, and the hopes of discovery was just the way of life. What to discover? Well, that's anything and anywhere, friends. Their fame and fortune await. This was true of Sir Ernest Shackleton, a man who was seeking his own destiny and adventure. He famously boarded a ship called the Endurance, and with a motley crew set sail for the Antarctic waters. Things were going great until they weren't. That's a classic line, isn't it? The ship got stuck in ice, and despite the crew's best efforts, the ship was beginning to lose its fight and sank. Miraculously though, all crew survived, including Shackleton. Pretty amazing story. The ship was lost under the icy waters for years, thought to be lost forever. That was until March of this year, March of 2022, it was found, and even more surprisingly, she was mostly intact and preserved due to the frigid temperatures of the water. Ooh, nice. Number 9, Rosetta Stone. stone. What if I told you the reason why we understand so much of the ancient world and ancient Egypt is because of a small dictator from France who had an ego issue? Sounds fake, right? Well, actually, it's true. Napoleon Bonaparte, the Corsican ogre as he was also known, during his reign of fame and military power, he went on tour in Egypt. And I mean, why not? It's hot, sunny, and you got those pyramids. How can you say no? It's beautiful. Well, like something out of Call of Duty Zombies, Napoleon took his army boys and a couple of egghead archaeologists to uncover the hidden secrets. That's when the Rosetta Stone was found. A large stone tablet that was inscribed 3 times with 3 different languages, but all saying the same thing. Thus, it helped us understand and decipher ancient Egyptian language and unlocked many other secrets as well. Pretty shocking find. Number 8. Pompeii. Imagine a sunny day like any other. You're a Roman citizen walking through a market as it hustles and bustles during a bright afternoon. The smell of small restaurants fill the air. The playful sound of friends chatting away charms the background. Then the ground violently shakes and a thick black ash covers the city. Within a few short hours, like a scene from Revenge of the Sith, lava flows everywhere and the people are buried in burning hot ash and smoke. Oof, no thanks, I don't want the Darth Vader treatment. Pompeii is an interesting story. It wasn't rediscovered in one major excavation, but rather people kept walking over it and going, huh, I wonder what this is. And that's pretty much it. Excavation after excavation eventually led to modern scientists to rediscover the city, and in a quite well preserved state actually, surprisingly. An ancient restaurant was found not too long ago complete with mosaics. That's pretty cool. That's pretty sweet. Number 7. The Terracotta Army. Well, we all have that favorite thing we love. For me, it's video games. I love video games. I'd say comedy, but it's kind of hard to take that with you when you pass away. I'll try though. We'll see. For years, kings and leaders tried their best to take things with them in the afterlife. Egyptians were so worried they had to take their cats and dogs with them. Or at least they tried. They did. Well, very famously, the first emperor of China tried to take a terracotta army with him, or rather an army to protect him in the afterlife. Yes, Emperor Qin was famously buried with soldiers to protect him in the afterlife. Thing is, this wasn't a handful we're talking about, but hundreds in all shapes and sizes, which is really crazy actually. Discovered by farmers attempting to dig a well in 1974, they came to amass a huge burial site with soldiers and cavalry, all with bronze swords that were quickly looted. It makes sense. It's one of the biggest discoveries of all time. In the archaeology department at least. Pretty cool, pretty sick. Number 6. The Nazca Lines. At some point there was a dude walking in the southern Peruvian desert and saw some lines on the ground and thought, gee, those are some funny looking lines there. Huh. And when he went to a higher elevation and looked back at it, well, it looked like it was a larger image, he must have thought to himself. It's probably nothing. Well, once humans had gained the ability to fly, the images were much clearer. In a large portion of the Peruvian desert are long but shallow trenches dug in the ground. The resulting product is images and that of Mesoamerican drawings of animals, like a spider, a monkey, and a bird, and most recently a cat. It's weird. It's weird animals in the ground. I don't know. It's just kind of strange. Question is, who done it? That is the question. That's always the question for archaeology, isn't it? No one is really sure who done it, actually. And it also begs the question, if you were to dig all these drawings, who would see them but God and or aliens? That's kind of a weird thing to understand. Who would see that? No one's up there back then, right? Strange. Number 5. Titanic. Before 1997, the Titanic was one of those aquatic mysteries. For those that have been captivated by it sinking from stories and tales from survivors, people wanted to know her final resting place. And yes, I know it wasn't 1997, but that was when every person on planet Earth knew what the Titanic was. Thanks to Terminator director James Cameron. Kind of a weird thing to do after Terminator, but okay. And teenage heartthrob Leonardo DiCaprio. And maybe a lady, but you know what I'm talking about. It was actually rediscovered on September 1st, 1985 at 3,500 meters below the ocean surface, which if you didn't know is pretty deep down there. It's not every day you discover an unsinkable ship thought to be lost forever at the bottom of the ocean. Pretty exciting. Number 4. Remains of Richard III. Richard III, the King of England and Ireland, and if you go by how Shakespeare describes him, well, he's a rotten man, he is, sir. A hunchback with an irregular walk. In real life, well, not so much, but that's because Shakespeare wrote it during the time period when the monarch was the monarch to got rid of the monarch that was Richard III's monarch. It's just good politics, it makes sense. Despite what Shakespeare said about him, he still wasn't great. Who was back then? No one really was. During the many years since the Mad King's passing, it seems his remains were lost. Until one day in 2014, his remains were dug up in a parking lot, of all places. Who would have thought? Just where a king like that would have wanted to be. Kinda strange to dig up one of the country's kings on the job on the day of a construction job. It's kinda weird, you know, just average day and you're like, oh, there's a former King of England, cool. You know what I mean? It's kind of weird. Number 3, Bigus Cheddicus. How many of you folks like cheese? I'm willing to bet it's a lot of you. I know I do. My favorite is mozzarella, especially from a mom and pop pizza shop or homemade Italian cuisine. Oh, baby, it's the best. I'm not Italian, but I love the communities. Watch out, little Italy, here I come. I'm gonna eat all your pizza. In a recent discovery in Egypt, archaeologists came across ancient cheese of all things. Who would have thought? Which may be the oldest cheese ever to be found. Estimated to be 3,200 years old and composed of goat's milk. While it might be tempting to dive in and take a slice of the cheese, yes, as aristocrats are known to do, I would hold back as it is also found to have bacteria called brucellose, which is not good for your health. It will make you very sick, so don't eat it. Number 2, I think I stepped in something. I personally find it very fascinating when we dig up something from the past, or really just discover anything from the past. For years, that artifact sat there as the world went on. It's a weird thought for me, I don't know. For me, it's even more impressive if the item is in good condition. It helps give us a better view into the past. Take the 5,000-year-old leather shoe found in an Armenian cave, for example. The laces on this bad boy were still in good condition, which is very impressive. It's a long time. So what's the secret? The shoe was found in a pile of ye olde manure. Supposedly this had some sort of restorative properties on the shoe, although I'm not rushing to try it and I don't recommend anyone else does either. Number 1, Turkish Delight. In 1963, a man was doing renovations on his home. After a trip in 1960s Turkish Home Depot, he began his work. After knocking down a wall, he found a hidden room, which then led to a tunnel. And that tunnel led to the lost city of Derinkuyu. Yes, this man had a whole ancient city right underneath him. Honey, there's an ancient city beneath us! The city proved to be massive, with an estimated population of 20,000 people, complete with livestock. They weren't there, obviously, it's just what they thought it would hold. So for those of our viewers living in older homes, make sure to check behind your walls. You may have some secrets hidden there. Ooh, wouldn't that be cool?